With a heavy, haunting look, the young woman stares into the truth about existence and lands on this brutal thought: life is nothing but a terrible game. So she makes her move and decides to cut someone loose from her party. She lays it out in plain words, then he realizes he can't keep pace with her battles anymore. Words hang between them as the two face off on a city overpass, the lights and buildings sprawling out behind their backs like a battlefield. German Hagenko, level 254 Valkyrian boss of the Holy Sword Party, lined in and demanded, "Can you hear me?" While Kaikeru, the young man, snapped his gaze away with a face full of trouble. Kajura Kaikeru's status just screams a wild star contrast. He's a trapmaster stuck at only level 75, yet he's also tied to the Holy Sword. The Gain's gaze turns tender as she drifts back to the moment she hit Tokyo, remembering how all four of them climbed the ranks together from the very start. She leans in and admits she'd been sure Tokyo would be crawling with monsters, but it's just a massive city where people and fortune keep piling in, and now she finally understands. Kaikeru stared back and she told them straight, this was her choice alone, and she hadn't told the other two members of their party yet. Her words hit like a final verdict: expulsion. He mutters it under his breath, admitting the leader asterisk can throw anyone out, but he also knows that doing it like this stains the party's name. His head dips in surrender, and he starts admitting he should have brought it up himself, his confession slipping away into silence. He listens as Hagen admits he's stubborn, because that streak was born in him from childhood, and then she orders him to take care of the paperwork he'll need before he leaves. She keeps pressing the offer. She'll dump a quarter of the party's shared assets into his account to make up for the mess she caused, even telling him to use it to gear up his replacement, and he shuts her down cold. With one last glance, he tells her it's been amazing and walks off, goodbye hanging heavy in the air. Her eyes shimmer as she answers the farewell. As he strides off, he can't stop replaying the choice, admitting he'd seen this disaster coming all along. Those recent dungeon runs had felt like suicide missions. Fresh battle memories hit him like a punch. One light graze and his life would have been over. He didn't survive because he was lucky. His friends stepped in, and the terror of abandoning them froze him solid, stopping him from walking away on his own terms. He keeps trudging alone, and every step drags him back to the same cruel truth. Talent has never been fair to him, not since he was born, not even the day he first shoved his way into a dungeon. Still, he clenches his jaw, fighting through the silence that haunts his thoughts. He halts on the overpass, cranes his neck to the sky, like the words he's been choking on finally break free. He just wants to stay with them a little longer. With that quiet wish hanging in the air like a curse, Kajura Kaikeru was finally kicked out of the Holy Sword Party for real. Later, inside a public building, he catches snippets of whispers from the crowd, and they roast him for getting dismissed, saying it was way overdue, and acting shocked he was ever with Holy Sword at all. He grimaces because he just realized how fast gossip can spread. He strode through the city streets, his mind snapping back to his job class, Trapmaster. He scoffed at the name, like, with a title like that, of course he'd be the reason the geniuses in his area were stuck. He stumbles down the street and smacks right into a passerby. It's Ko. He blurts out a fast apology, but she keeps walking like it never happened, not even a glance back, and he just stands there, stunned, realizing how tough she is as an adventurer. As he keeps moving, his mind spirals into the world's broken state, because for 40 years, bizarre holes have been tearing open the sky, and in this new reality, he can't help thinking that anyone who lags behind just gets stranded there. 4 decades ago, the holes ripped open the sky over Tokyo, and ever since, a brand new kind of human has risen from the chaos. People with special powers, the ones they call adventurers. He lands on a train just as a loudspeaker starts blaring a wild broadcast about humanity's future and dungeons. Then it zeroes in on Japan's most legendary party. Holy Sword, the crew he used to run with, celebrating how they smashed a record by conquering a staggering 300 dungeons. The broadcast keeps rolling, shouting the party's next mission: wipe out the Origin Gate, before they even touch the 7 legendary first dungeons still sitting there undefeated, and he tells himself to drop it like it's none of his business, until a quick flicker of movement outside the window snaps his eyes to the sky. From the shadowy vortex looming over the city, several sleek, egg-shaped figures start dropping out of the darkness, one after another. Suddenly, a grotesque, stretched-out arm with eerie markings rips through the portal and lurches downward toward the city below. His eyes blow wide with pure disbelief, and he whips his gaze around the train car like, wait, am I the only one who sees this? Because outside, the monster's hand is now swinging a glowing, ornately carved spear with a thunderous roar, the spear slams in, then everything bursts like shattered glass and twisted metal, while a voice shrieks, run. After the chaos fades, there's nothing left but shattered wreckage. This train car is a mangled tomb of twisted steel and scattered debris. Amid the wreckage, Kikaru howls in pain, blood spilling from his lips as he glares at the sky where the portal used to be, only to find the attacker already gone. His mind reels, wondering if it could have burst through the origin gate, but he snaps that thought away as pure nonsense. His strength crumbles and he drops hard onto the rubble, then a panic strike thought hits him. He has to warn the girls, his old party, before they get hurt. Rage and grief choke him as he sobs, furious he couldn't keep up, mourning that if he's going to die, he at least wanted to stay with them until the very end. And just as he lies there, a pair of feet stops right in front of his face. He looks up and bam, there she is, a woman with insanely long, pale hair, standing over him in a dark, intricate dress, its lower half squirming like living tendrils. She smirks and tells him the chosen one can't be left in a state like this. Then she drops the real punch. His ability to even see the creature means only one thing: he's a failure. He slumps on the ground, his head buried in the rubble, barely processing the words she's shouting at him. Clawing together every last scrap of strength, he demands, "Who are you?" The woman freezes mid-breath like she's weighing miracles or nightmares, and then her eyes never leave his as she murmurs, "Let's see her." Her eyes, those strange, flower-like swirls, lock onto his soul, and she leans in so close that her whisper hits like a secret as she asks, "You want it, don't you?" Without waiting for an answer, she shoots back, asking if they should start, and right then, shadowy energy tendrils whip out, snag Kaikuru, and hoist his limp body into the air above her. She tugs him close, her hand cradling the back of his head as her lips smash softly against his. A brutal jolt rips through Kaikuru's system. He chokes out a strangled grunt, eyes popping wide, as a mysterious energy floods in from where it hits. He convulses in midair, bent in on himself as power crashes over him, wave after wave, and through it all, the mysterious woman just watches, calm and faintly smiling like she already knew. He slams back onto the ground, her strange words still burning in his head. She says she handed him power, promises she wants nothing in return, and dares him to live wild and free. Then she disappears and he panics, wondering if it was all a dream, until he realizes his wounds are gone completely. He shoved himself up out of the rubble, and right then he heard her voice again. Ko picked her way down the deadly wreckage, calling out, "Tell me you're okay," as he fought to get back on his feet. As she drops down, the shaking ground crumbles under her, then a massive concrete slab rips free, slamming toward the book like it wants it dead. Ko shrieks as the debris blasts downward at them, his eyes snapping wide with pure terror. He knows it's just another trap, and his mind scrambles, desperate to find a way to survive. His eyes snap to a single option in front of him, the little arrow symbol, and he freezes, stunned, scrambling to figure out what it means in the tiny sliver of time he has left. It slams into him, this power is new, and he can't ignore it. A flash of that tendril-clad woman rips across his mind, along with her promise to hand him power. And now he stares at his weird arrow symbol on instinct, wondering if that's the one unique ability she meant. No time to think, he lunges, screams, and slams the power. A huge glowing sigil with a downward arrow blooms across the falling slab, and he roars for everyone to get down. The symbol's power strikes like a thunderbolt, yanking the massive wreck clean off its course and slamming it into the ground miles safer, just before disaster can hit. He tilted his head to the sky, and there it was, that faint sigil hanging in the air. Then he stared at the power he'd just unleashed, realizing it wasn't a blessing at all, but a trap that could steer the movement of anything. Elsewhere at the disaster site, two investigators huddled over what really happened, and the older one snapped at his younger partner. How could this be more than a freak accident, when a giant arm supposedly tore through the chaos? The younger man swore it was true, but insisted nobody actually saw it, because if something that massive had erupted from the origin gate, the whole city would have erupted in panic too. He tells the young man to stick those words in his head, waves him off with a lazy, "Okay," and just as Kaikuru starts to walk away, the investigator snaps that he's no longer with the holy sword, so he better hand this mess to someone else. Later, deep in a forest near Tokyo, Kaikuru stares into the trees and realizes the whole talk was pointless. No matter how he explained it, the investigator would have dismissed him anyway, and now he's left wondering what chance he ever had against a threat like that. Then something clicks, fresh resolve surges in, and he decides he's changed his mind. He steps up to that tiny, boar-like creature, and his resolve turns to iron, because if this thing can help the holy sword crack the origin gate, then he'll do whatever it takes. A ranked Demolan-board creature stares back with pure defiance, and Kaikuru locks onto it like this is his final test, his shot to prove he's got what it takes to stand beside his old comrades again. He snaps into action and triggers the trap. Crack, massive blade tears up from the ground, slicing through the air, but the melon board jukes aside like it's seen this coming. Kaikuru grimaces, knowing his traps won't catch him that easily. He backs up fast, carving out space between himself and the creature, because as a trap master he can't strike head-on. His strength is all about baiting monsters into his traps and making them pay. That constant indirect fighting is why they get labeled weak, but Kaikeru won't break. He's tangled with monsters like this again and again. He sets yet another trap, then stays ice calm because he's sure he can read the creature's next move. But he doesn't stop at prediction. He slams the arrow symbol, then blasts a melon board screaming through the air, steering its path with total control as it barrels straight into the trap waiting for him. The creature doesn't even get a heartbeat to react before Kaikeru's plan detonates. Sharp spikes rocket up from the forest floor and slam it down, impaling it in an instant as Kaikeru watches from afar. He stares at his hand, realizing just how weak he is, because close-range fighting is new territory for him. Then it hits. If he can land a touch on that monster, he can trap it the moment it gets inside his reach. He stood there gasping, sweat slicking his skin as a hand shoved through his face. Sure, he'd won, but that one cold, dismissive thought slashed through the relief like, so what? The doubt evaporated just as fast as it showed up, and in its place thundered a fierce, unstoppable resolve. He clenched his fist, grinning like a champion, finally realizing he'd gotten the power he'd been craving all along. Elsewhere, amid the roar of another battle, a young woman in full plate armor charged in with pure grim resolve, swinging her blade and cutting down foes like a storm. In every strike, the same fiery hunger screamed in her head. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to become even stronger. Her focus shattered the moment two men screamed in panic nearby, begging Araju-sama to flee and save herself. But she exploded into a furious roar, snapping at them to shut up and insisting their cries were just noise, because she was standing alone against a whole horde of monsters. In a giant cavern, a massive swarm of tiny goblin-like creatures surges forward, choking the air with chaos. Right in the middle of it, the armored knight plants her feet and keeps the line, her shield snapping away blow after blow, while one of the miners she's shielding screams for her to ditch them and run, begging her to save herself. She spits out her plea, her face smeared with dirt and pure, grim resolve, and even when she hears his words, the sheer, endless swarm of assailants keeps crashing over her like a wave. Elsewhere in a sun-dappled forest, Kajura Kaikeru is wrapped in a warm burst of energy. Then it hits him like a slap to the face. He leveled up. It's been ages since he pulled that off solo, and the truth stings. He's been leaning on others for too long. His thoughts get shredded by a faint, metallic battle clang in the distance, and he freezes with a jolt. Yeah, he can't stray from his assigned area. The sound blasts again, and he snaps his head toward the source, because ever since the very first gates opened, monsters from those realms have been crawling into this world, creeping in one step at a time. Sharpens his aim, zeroing in on where that noise is coming from, a shadowy cave tucked into the nearby rock face. He leans in, and the sharper the clashes get, the clearer it becomes. Someone's fighting in there, and that freaks him out, because he was sure this spot was left unguarded. With total focus, he hears steel hammering shields and realizes, just from the sound, that they're on pure defense and barely holding on. He thinks about calling the association, but stops himself, because if things go bad, he might run into monsters way stronger than the one he just survived. His brow knotted with indecision, and for a split second he wants to stay right where he is, thinking reinforcements are on the way, so he can just hold out and wait. But that idea just won't sit right, so he launches into a hard sprint straight for the cave, because running isn't the answer, not when he has no clue how brutal those monsters are, and even if the armor weighs him down, he's taking it with him. All he can do is reach that place and help. He slammed his foot down at the last second, triggering a glowing magical sigil in the dirt. Then the trap snapped shut, blasting a violent wave of force straight toward the fight. The blast tore straight for the horde, blasting through the cold night as she fought to keep her shield from slipping, goblins pounding it with every hit, while grim determination hard-set her face like stone. A massive club crashed into her shield with a sickening thud, yanking a sharp cry of pain from her mouth. Then one of the miners she was guarding shouted her title behind her, frantic and alarmed. That hit slammed her backward and tore her defense apart. She staggered, breathless and beaten, eyes squeezing shut as the horned goblin hovering over her lined up the final strike. Just as the creature lunged, the trap blew, boom, and the explosion ripped through the goblin's ranks, flinging bodies and weapons through the air while the night itself crashed down into the cavern. Kajura Kaikeru stepped into the fresh, cleared space and loomed over the fallen knight, ready to lend a hand. Just then, a nearby warrior with short, dark hair clocked his sudden arrival, stunned by how fast he moved and the top-tier gear he had, and she instantly figured he had to be an adventurer. The dark-haired warrior demanded to know if he'd really help them, and Kaikeru snapped back that he wasn't some rescue fighter. He'd just been training nearby, leveling up, then promised he'd take nothing but the experience points as long as they'd let him lend a hand. Her eyes snapped to the blonde knight and the miner she was shielding, and it hit her hard. That knight had been guarding all those civilians alone this whole time. Once the deal was sealed, Kaikeru leaned in and asked her name. She answered, Rizé Ajanot, then declared she was a paladin, ready to guard the defense while he went all in on offense. And when he passed the torch, he told her his name was Kejura Kaikaru. When Ajino pressed him about his job, he snapped back with zero hesitation. "I'm a trap master." Her eyes popped wide with total disbelief at that wild, unfamiliar title. She stared in disbelief, trying to wrap her head around his wild job class pick as he took the lead. Then he ordered her to stay put and guard the miners, swearing he'd deal with the attacks himself, because when the goblins finally surged in, he could tell they weren't dropping so easily anymore, not like they did before they were caught off guard. He hurled himself into the chaos, immediately realizing that snapping them off one by one with traps still wouldn't cut it. He needed a brand new move, an area of effect blast, and somehow he didn't know how, but certainty hit him like a wave. He could do this, so he started setting a trap marked with an arrow symbol. With a sharp cry of trap fusion, a tangled magical sigil snapped to life on the cavern floor. Then a blade of pure dark energy tore out of it, carving through the air straight at the goblins. The arrow, with a slash technique, ripped open a brutal web of crossing energy blades and mowed down the entire goblin horde in one unstoppable blast. In the blink of an eye, the cavern went dead silent. Goblin bodies dropped, laced across the floor, all from a single brutal strike. The armored knight and the miners just stood there, frozen in shock, staring at the aftermath like they couldn't believe what they'd seen. She spun toward him, blurting, "Are you okay?" and "Wait, are you a wizard?" He stayed cool and straightened her out. "I'm a trap master." The knight snapped back, saying it couldn't be true. She'd never even heard of a trap master who could unleash an attack that strong. Then he shot a message to the miners, and they cheered that he'd saved them. He barked, "Escape now," and demanded, "Can you run?" And in his own head, he swallowed hard because he'd just tried the technique for the first time, and it actually worked. Right as they geared up to leave, a brutal stomp thundered from deeper inside the cave. Kaikaru's face snapped grim. He already knew what hit next. When the knight asked what was wrong, Kaikaru started telling him the truth. After a fight this huge, she would be staring on in dread, begging him, word for word, not to mention her. Her worst fears came true. Right out of that passage stomped a hulking ogre, the horde's boss, swinging a brutal spiked club like a wrecking ball. He stared down the new foe and knew, right away, it was way stronger than him. Then doubt hit hard, and he couldn't stop asking if he should even swing at all, or if his traps would still work. He barks orders to the armored knight to push the others as far away as he can, and she freezes, stunned, before asking what kind of person could give a command like that. He snaps his gaze away from her question and locks onto the giant beast, sword raised and ready, and then he dares the ogre to charge straight at him. With a guttural roar, the ogre barrels forward, club up, ready to crush, and he steels himself, knowing this is the real test. From far off, Ajino watches and the pieces click. If traps can be fused, then she can forge one of her own. She wastes zero time and dives right into the chaos, shouting as she snaps her trap shut. Then boom, the double arrow symbol lights up. Magical projectiles crash into the ogre's torso, punching through its thick hide like it's nothing. Then the beast screams in raw agony at the brutal surprise. From a safe distance, she shouts to Kaikaru and lays out the plan. Her defenses are weak, so she has to strike from range. Sure, her daggers won't hit like magic, but they'll still land damage, and Kaikaru gets it immediately. They've got to grind the beast down bit by bit. Now Fury turns his sights on something far closer. The ogre raises its massive club and comes down on him with brutal force. Meanwhile, the armored knight shepherds the miners to safety, and one of them begs her to call for help, then asks her to lead the way, but her eyes stay locked on the fight roaring behind them. "I'm going back," she snaps. "I have to help him." Ajino's punch from the ogre hits Kairu like a wrecking ball, and he sails through the air. When he finally scrambles up, he spots the next strike already charging at him. There's no time to dodge, not even for a breath. So Ajino throws another projectile, slamming it into the ground right beside him like a desperate decoy, just to buy him a second. The ogre towers over him, snarling that he dropped his weapon, but he's already cooking up a comeback. Jaw set with pure fury, he slams his open palm to the ground and detonates a fresh trap, an arrow symbol fused with fire. He snaps his trap shut, and the runes under the ogre's feet blaze to life. Then magical fire blasts upward in a roaring, earth-shaking explosion. The explosion swallows the mighty ogre whole, blasting his massive bulk into a blazing silhouette as the inferno roars on far off. The new armored knight just stares in shock, realizing his speed is pure rogue, but his power hits like a wizard's fire. After the fiery attack finally ends, Kairu stands on scorched ground, staring straight ahead, while Ajino watches him and a single thought locks in: this guy could totally flip how adventurers see the world. Kajura Kaikaru stands in the Kanazawa branch of Rise, Japan's biggest adventure gear brand, and his eyes go wide as he stares down the weapon displays. While he thanks his customer for the business, he spots a familiar face. He remembers that glowing item she gave him, and suddenly her name clicks until shock hits. She's not just the president's daughter, she's the chief of the Hakuriko branch. Later, he sits across from her at the table and soaks in her gratitude. She tells him that in their survey, the monsters they faced for valuables were totally different from what they'd been told, and that's exactly what throws him off, because why would a branch chief even need bodyguard duty? She tells him she had to step in herself because she already threw her subordinates into danger, and she insists it's even worse since she only got her post through family connections. He just listens, then quietly realizes she probably gets hit with nepotism accusations all the time. Barton squirms as she tells him that thanking him wasn't the real reason they met. Then she pitches a business conversation, leaving him staring in pure confusion. Leaning in just a bit, she makes her move, straight up asking him to sign a sponsorship contract with her. He blurts out, "I'm confused, I'm no PR guy, I wouldn't even look good on a poster." And she snaps back, "Good, because this isn't about marketing. I want to back you one-on-one," and that only throws him deeper into the dark until he demands to know why. With a steady gaze, she stakes her dream on him and says, "All right, let's make you the strongest there is." She's so stunned by her own words that she can barely breathe, and he starts second-guessing her. Like, shouldn't she be hunting a top ranker, a holy sword type, not someone like him, so he blurts the truth. He got kicked out of his old party, but she doesn't flinch. She calls it an investment and says she won't stick with a loser. She calmly asked why he'd been expelled, and he stared at the floor, admitting it was just because he was too weak. After a brief pause, she dropped her eyes and passed judgment on his old comrades, so if that's the case, they'd better be terrified. She watches him like a locked door as his fist tightens, and he demands, no, he insists, that she never badmouth his old comrades again. He instantly backs off, blurts out an apology, and admits he never should have said a word, because he gets it. She was only trying to lift his spirits. She flashes a calm, reassuring smile and tells him straight, she doesn't care if he gets expelled, as long as he doesn't commit a single crime. She snaps her gaze upward, stunned that they accepted her, and starts grilling herself on why she ever said yes. His eyes drop to the table as one word keeps ringing in his head, louder, stronger, impossible to shake. He clenched his resolve into a vow he'd get stronger, not only in body but in his mind too. With that fresh fire in his chest, he stands up straight and signs on for the contract, no hesitation. The branch chief grins like he's just won something, then leans in casually and asks who he used to belong to. His answer hangs in the air as the scene whips out to the city beyond, the Holy Sword Party, and the branch chief is left completely speechless at what he's just learned. Out beyond the city, Hajinko, part of that same crew, perches on the wreckage of a gigantic beast, staring into the distance as memories crash down on her, Kaikeru Shizuoka gone and never coming back. She perched on the monster's giant skull, stared into the barren wasteland, and quietly wondered if he was okay. She remembers talking it out with her Holy Sword crew, Itomi Kyukuri and Ashiter Yukiko, while Kyukuri insisted it was the only way forward, saying they couldn't keep dragging Kajura into danger just to feed their own selfish wants, and Yukiko nodded along, solemn as a vow. Kokiri stepped away from her, wading through the shallow stream as her final advice hit hard. Ko wasn't allowed to blame herself for the choice. Ko had zero plans to forgive herself. She knew exactly what she'd done, because she was the one who cut Kairu off as an adventurer. And when Kokiri clocked her grim mood, he just dryly noted how she always looks so deadly serious. Kokiri then dropped a jaw-dropping question. Did Ko propose to him at the exact same moment she fired the shot? She mused that if Ko had tried to soften the blow with a huge dramatic line, like saying she couldn't live if he died, the result might have shocked everyone by turning out surprisingly good. Chilled by the thought, Ku went quiet but swore to herself she couldn't possibly have done something like that, while Kokiri dug deeper, grilling whether Ku was the kind of woman who just waits for a man to guess her feelings. Kokiri burst into laughter, muttering that somehow everything spiraled into a mess, then sighed because nobody ever admitted their feelings, while Yukiko jumped in, saying it really was the perfect chance to finally hook up, only for Ko to push things too soon and mess it all up. Akiri then shifted into something deeper, warning Ko that even if it felt like yesterday, time would keep chewing forward, things would change, and before she even realized it, they'd be miles apart. Yukiko's voice snaps Ko out of the haze, and then, boom, she drops a rumor about a crew getting ready to take on the Origin Gate, leaving Kokiri reeling in shock. Po admits the rumor is real, then drops the bombshell that she's got a plan to conquer the Origin Gate, a strategy she says was just shared with the top party leaders, and the moment she starts talking, this overwhelming power seems to pour out of her. She tells her companions, come fall around December, there'll be an election test, and if they're strong enough to make the cut, they'll be announced to the whole world in public. Her words linger in the air as she and Kokiri lock eyes, both bracing for whatever the future throws at them. Yukiko smashes the silence and fires off a fearless plan. After they crush the Origin Gate, they should all ditch being adventurers for good. She keeps going, eyes drifting away, and finally drops her real reason. She wants to take Kaikuru and start a new life in a country where polygamy is allowed. Hakuri whips her head toward Ko with a grin, chuckling at their friend's wild declaration, then goes, "What on earth are you talking about?" Meanwhile, Kajura Kaikuru slips in ahead of time to a traditional building wrapped in keep your rud tape, and with a maid uniform woman at his side, he leans in and asks straight up if this is the dungeon. The woman in the maid uniform replies on the spot, confirming Lady Aquino has handed the dungeon rights to him. Then she steps forward and introduces herself as Togen Natsum, the inspector in charge, and admits she never thought she'd get stuck overseeing some low-ranked dungeon like this. She tells him plain as day she's just here to watch and she can't help him at all. Kajura takes that in, then immediately unsheathes his sword. Natsum can only shoot him a look and wish him good luck. He storms into the dungeon with his sword already drawn, instantly throwing himself into monster fights, and he decides, before he goes all in, that he'll test the range and cooldown of his abilities first. His training finally drags him right up to this huge, ornate door, and he can't help but wonder, I've never stepped into a boss room alone before. Then it hits him. If he can truly master his arrow symbol to boost himself, he might just stand shoulder to shoulder with a fighter-type boss. He flashed images of Ko, Yukiko, and Kokiri. He meant to tell them to wait, but now he was done hesitating, and he lunged to catch up, right as a rank B goblin general erupted in front of him, crackling his knuckles like a warning. The creature snapped its power loose, and the floor blew up into a non-stop storm of razor spikes. He rocketed aside and twisted through each hit, then realized the whole chamber was the monster's weapon, so charging in was a death wish. Rage filled him because he knew exactly what he had to do: find the opening. His mission was simple: get close enough to shatter its armor with one crushing strike, so he pushed through the storm of deadly projectiles, hunting for that one perfect moment to strike. That moment finally hit. He launched himself high over the spiked field, shouting that the monster's rampage was done. Now it was his time to strike. He dug deep, poured out his power, and unleashed a blazing arrow symbol slash. He slammed down empowered slashes like a meteor shower, smashing the goblin general and ripping a sharp, pained roar out of his throat. Then, as the creature staggered, he declared that the trap was finally set. In the blink of an eye, the arrow symbol quartet unleashed, shattering everything and boosting his power 4 times over. The strike landed like lightning, splitting the goblin general cleanly in two, head to toe, without a trace left behind. As the monsters crumbled into specks of light, he stood in the stunned silence afterward, staring down at what they'd left behind. He stared at the drop, a ring packed with a fire trap, and even though he knew he could use it, he decided it fit Ray's away better. Bursting out of the dungeon, he found the entrance sealed off, then a whole welcoming party waited there. Rise, Kokiri, and Natsum stood ready, while Ko hung back a little. And Ashitari Yukiko couldn't hold it in. She shot forward, laughing with pure joy as she blurted out that he'd finally made it out. Inside the cavern, Kajura Kaikuru lurks in a cloak of shadow, watching shimmering particles fade away in front of him, until he spots the wreckage and realizes it's a monster drop. He stares at the ring someone left behind, clocks that it's got a deadly fire trap hidden in it, and grudgingly admits it's not totally useless, just a decent little win, maybe even a gift for Ray's ape. He shoved the seeds deeper into the dungeon as glowing energy spheres lit the halls, and he caught his breath, slow progress sure, but he could feel it. He was leveling up for real. As he bursts out of the dungeon entrance, the long-haired young woman comes barreling toward him, breathless with relief, shouting that he's finally out. Her eyes lit up as she stared at his brand-new cloak, gushing that it's pretty and that it fits him perfectly. Then she leaned in like she'd just uncovered treasure. She'd never seen gear like this in any shop, and she couldn't help asking if it was a rare pull. Continues, and her curiosity sparks. Who asterisk were the people bold enough to step into a dungeon? Nearby, Toganatsum snaps to her companion that she'd warned the girl this was a private dungeon, but the girl just brushed it off. Kaikeru stands there, totally stunned by how shamelessly fearless she is. With a bright smile, the girl introduces herself, Tsukyu Tsukasa, and drops the bomb that she's 14 years old. Kaikeru goes quiet, instantly clicking. This girl isn't just anyone, she's an adventurer. Takasa tells them to swap contact info, praising him for his impressive strength, and then he watches her like he's studying a mystery, because she looks brand new to all this, and seeing an adventure that young in Tokyo still blows his mind. He waves her off coldly, saying he doesn't even know her, then scolds her for being careless with her info outside a proper raid, then he strides away. She barrels after him, shouting that she's a rank B assassin. She barrels closer, begging him to hear her out, then blurts that she needs a partner for a dungeon run, so she slaps down her adventurer card, and when he sees her rank, Kaikeru freezes because she's higher than him. He leans in and asks about her friends, stunned that her adventurous classmates aren't coming along, so Sakasa tells him the truth. They won't travel with her because the places she wants to explore are way too dangerous. He presses her on why she won't just go exploring by herself, and she meets his eyes with a soft smile, admitting that alone it gets lonely fast. With a defeated sigh he gives in, but shoots a warning, don't keep calling, because he's swamped. Then Tsukasa breaks into a huge, joyful yay as they swap contact info with a quick snap of their cards. As she whips away, a triumphant thought crashes through her head, Trap Master. Her excitement practically crackles as she blurts out that this is her first time exploring with someone like him. Then she waves him off, promises she'll message him later, and sprints away, leaving Kairu staring after her like her whole arrival and exit was a storm. Later, as he strolls through the city, he can't help thinking, so this is where the next adventures start, just like hers. A wave of relief hits him. He's not some famous face outside Tokyo. Then right as he nears a building, a young woman with wavy, light-colored hair steps up and greets him like he's been gone forever. Welcome back. Inside, she grills him about the dungeon, and he tells her he's sure he can handle one a rank higher. Hearing that, she jumps in and offers to set up the next dungeon for him, and he accepts on the spot. She calls him Rise instead, then thrusts a tiny ring into his hands, asking him to take it. He glances at the band and without a hint of panic, calmly nods yes. His calm acceptance knocks the breath right out of her. Then a fierce blush blooms across her face as she just stares, totally wrecked by how he reacted. An awkward silence stretches between them as he keeps a neutral, slightly baffled look, and she blushes hard, too embarrassed to meet his eyes. Lustard snaps her eyes shut and leans in to ask Kaikeru what it really means when a man slips a ring onto a woman's hand. He blurts out a quick apology, insisting he never meant anything by that gesture. He only saw the ring as Dungeon Day gear. Still, she won't let it go, pressing him hard. So why hand it to me if it's just equipment? His mind spiraled even while he insisted it was a sponsor's gift from a dungeon Ron, yet for her, that moment felt like the sweetest first step in their relationship. She'd been dying to get him to raise this memento, because she wanted this moment to be theirs to share. She shuts her eyes with a defeated breath, feeling it in her bones. No matter what happened, nothing between them ever really changed. Then a new thought hits him and he blurts out, "Oh, sorry," when he realizes he just slid the ring onto her left ring finger and it finally clicks for her, freezing her in stunned silence. Later, all alone in his room, he plops down on the edge of his bed and stares at the contact card that Suki Gase, the girl he met earlier, handed him. Then his phone blares to life and Sakasa's voice snaps through the line, asking if he'll join her for a temporary party tomorrow, and teasing him for vanishing on her even after he swore he was too busy. She tells him a new acquaintance is building a team, and that every person in the party matches his rank. He listens, weighing the offer hard, and even though a quick dungeon run with a bunch of strangers sounds perfect, he still can't bring himself to jump in. While he stays on the phone, the room sinks into darkness, and pale white silhouettes with gaping mouths crowd around him, like the past is reaching back to haunt him again. His mind drifts straight back to a memory of his little sister. She begged him to take her on the quest, and he balked, convinced the party leader would shut her down, even though she swore the leader was genuinely kind. Back in the present, he answers Tsukasa's call and agrees to crash her party, only if the leader gives the okay. She's practically bursting with joy, thanking him nonstop and proposing they meet tomorrow. Counting down like an adventure is already underway. The very next day, a huge, laughing man with a grin stretched ear to ear ROARS his approval and welcomes Kaikeru to the team on the spot. Kaikeru's eyes narrowed as the man slid into quick acceptance, and he pressed hard, asking if they're really okay with him joining, especially because he's the trap master, and that single detail made the others freeze mid-motion. He snaps back hard, barking that his worries don't matter. No matter how much of a trap master he is, it changes nothing because at their current rank that one kind of job barely counts, unlike in a place like Tokyo. After that back and forth, Tsukasa whips around to reassure Kaikeru. She says the others seem genuinely kind, tells him to drop the worry, and stresses that inside a dungeon, nothing builds trust like an honest face. With the team's nerves finally easing, Tsukasa thrusts her arm up in pure hype, whipping everyone into shape as they kick off their long-awaited dungeon raid. Right at the entrance, Kaikeru's eyes turn sharp and cold. Then, out of nowhere, a tiny, blurry orb of light forms right in front of him. The light snaps him back with a jolt, sudden and brutal, showing him in the past, dressed in totally different gear, whipping around like he'd been caught off guard. His memory snaps into focus, and the faces of his old party members come rushing back. Then that same creepy, unsettling dread hits him again, crashing through his chest and leaving him rattled and totally lost. Battle chaos yanks him back into the moment, and his fresh party leader, a loud, unstoppable guy, blasts out a warning. Wolf-like monsters are sprinting straight for them, so everyone stays put and holds their ground. While the party rushes into the beasts, a tiny masked girl watches from the sidelines like she's already clocked the whole plan. She spots how everyone's dangerous, but Tsukasa is on another level, moving with blinding speed and perfect control like she's destined to become top tier. Then she spins around and shouts at Kaikeru, barking, "Set the trap." He stays cool and says it's already done. Then a bright magical sigil flares to life in front of him, and right after that, dark spikes blast up from the ground and tear into one of the charging wolves. The blonde guy and the glasses-wearing guy just stare on, nodding like, "Not bad at all." As Takasa cheers for the next wave, the loud-mouthed leader snaps that the older guys need to catch their breath, yet Kaikeru can't shake the unease, wondering if that weird feeling from earlier was nothing but his imagination, because everything is somehow going too smoothly. The party pushes deeper into the thick forest, boots pounding and breath burning. Tsukasa spots their momentum and insists the boss room can't be far now. While they walked, the loudmouthed leader snapped his gaze back over his shoulder, and his grin vanished, replaced by a cold, calculated stare. A quick thought hits him like, okay, it's about time. In a blur of motion, he lunges, clamps onto Tsukasa, and pins her tight in his grip. Kaikeru gets shoved aside. The leader sneers that even a top-ranked adventurer turns into a scrawny punk the second they're caught. Then the blonde man growls at Kaikeru to stay out of it, swearing he can't stop them anyway. While Kaikeru recovers, a jolt of clarity hits. He finally snaps and realizes what was creeping at him earlier, that unmistakable clink of high-rank gear, the one he's heard way too many times. He marches straight up to the leader and fires off a brutal question. Are you hiding your equipment just to play it off as low-ranked? Now his sword is leveled at all three men, and Kaikeru snaps his accusation out loud. These aren't adventurers, they're bandits. The leader keeps Tsukasa pinned captive, smirking like he owns the moment, while his allies crowd in close. He stood his ground, jaw set tight as Tsukasa staggered from the shock. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Bandits, and the whole time they'd been the bait. Lured in with that, we're on the same level act. Kairo didn't blink. His read was ice cold, because their moves screamed they weren't C-rank, and their gear was top tier. Tsukasa, trapped and desperate, couldn't make sense of how that earlier kindness turned into betrayal. The loud, taunting leader sneered and said the disguise was the whole trick, just to get them to drop their guard. Then he jeered at her, demanding what a trap master could possibly do right here. She snapped into a biting laugh and screamed that nobody would ever work with someone like her, an elite adventurer who looks down on everyone, unless you happen to carry rare gear she can swipe. The three bandits closed in, and the little masked girl shoved herself against the leader's shoulder, shouting at Kaikeru to bolt and warn the others, only for him to stay cool and flat out refuse, telling her he was okay because he was strong. His swagger got crushed by a loud, cocky leader. He sneered and barked that he should stop spouting nonsense. Then Kaikeru just questioned how any trapmaster could slip out of a mess even the guy himself couldn't solve, and Kaikeru's stare never once wavered. As she overheard it, Tsukasa's face twisted in pure anguish, and she blurted, "You're going to die here too." Rage and guilt swallowed her as she insisted it was her fault for pulling him into this mess. Then a small, trembling apology slipped out of her. Her despair surged as she watched her last flicker of hope vanish. She'd actually thought she'd finally stop feeling alone, and then this happened. Across from her, Kaikeru stood ready to strike, two blades drawn while enemy spears aimed straight at him. Jaw clenched hard, determination burning like a vow. He kept his voice steady and apologized, "Sorry, Tsukiga," and the moment he said her name, the blonde bandit surged forward, blades whirling as she lunged. But he had zero plans to run. He swore the road he was headed down wouldn't let him look past filth like this. In a sun-dappled forest, the loud party leader crouches over his fallen female companion, his face twisted with shock and fury. He whips his glare toward someone unseen and snaps, "Huh, what the hell did you just say?" Kajura Kaikeru answers with nothing but cold indifference, standing face-to-face with the party's blonde swordsman, expression as flat as stone as he calmly repeats himself, "I called you ignorable trash." Salt sparks the party leader's rage, his face twists, veins popping on his forehead as he bellows at his crew, "Don't mouth off, you trashed your job, punk, kill HIM." Before anyone can react, Kike vanishes, then blasts out, "Trap S live," an arrow sigil engaged. A magical glyph erupts in midair, snatches the blonde adventurer off his feet, and hurls him violently into the sky. The blonde man screams as Kaikeru hurls him into the sky, and below, his comrades just stare in frozen shock while Kaikeru finishes his technique. Watch that blazing sigil burn to life at his feet. With a thunderous crash, the adventurer slams onto the forest floor, completely wiped out. Kaikeru looms over him with his sword up and ready, and the party's glasses-wearing member stares in horror at the shock of it all. Then he whips around to the stuntman and admits he'd been ready to wait for them to move first, but they lagged behind, way too slow. Kaikeru laughs off their fancy gear, saying even if it's rare, it still makes them nothing more than C-rank trash on the inside. And from the side, the party leader clocks it all, calling him a bastard. While everyone else is handled, Kaikeru snaps his focus onto the party leader. Right beside them, the bandaged girl lies still on the ground, wiped out by a brutal, one-sided clash. The leader freezes mid-step, his confidence cracking as he stares at the glowing sigil by Kaikeru's hand, because he knows, no doubt at all, that touching that arrow's mark would get him killed. Kaikeru catches the leader's hesitation and strikes first. He hurls a flashbang, the man detonates a roar, then staggers in the blinding burst as Kaikeru barrels ahead, powered by the sigil's glow, and slams his attack home. He squares up to his opponent, who's down on hands and knees, coughing up the last sting of that flash, while the bigger man, even battered, digs deep, remembering battles in sandstorms and fights beneath the water, then hardens his resolve to stay perfect, leaving zero gaps for a strike. Rage boils in the party leader as he spits in disbelief at Kaikeru for daring to mock them, and Kaikeru just stays calm, telling him to pay attention, because he's going to kill him and leave him stripped of every last piece of gear. He brushes the gear aside, snapping that it isn't where the man's strength comes from, then stares at his own equipment and realizes he built himself with everything he stole from the people who used to mock him back then. That's how he thinks he became strong. His conviction snaps into a furious roar. He declares that only the strong make it out alive, and since he crushed the other challengers and walked away the winner, his strength is proven. Hikaru shuts that philosophy down cold. He snaps that the man didn't win, he crumpled because his heart failed. Then mid-sentence he rockets forward. His cloak shatters into dark fragments as sharp sigils flare across the ground beneath his opponent. A sigil erupts with light as he rockets closer in an instant. He barrels right past the bigger guy, their bodies brushing together in one blazing, no-stopping burst. The very next second he's right behind the party leader, yanking him hard from the back, while the opponents just stare, totally frozen in shock. With his opponent pinned and unable to move, Kaikeru leans in, voice calm but razor-focused, and wonders out loud if they didn't learn the same lesson growing up, because for any dungeon explorer, the real key is simple. You've got to trust the person watching your back. As the confrontation dies down, the story snaps back to the campsite, where Tsukasa rushes over and tells him she called for backup. She says no monsters showed up and she's feeling fine again. Then she hits him with the truth. Even if his wild display was just a bluff, it still scared them into getting saved. He watches the other party drag their crushed leader off, then grins, saying that camouflage cloth just saved the day. With all his gear on, he figures that guy won't drop that easily. Tsukasa nods quietly, no questions. Takasa whips around to him and throws out an apology. Instantly, he nails why she's upset, that other leader's accusation that he dragged her into all this. Then he tells her not to worry, confessing the truth. He's actually glad she invited him. Then he scans their mess and realizes their party has been cut down from 5 to just 2. He sighs and figures it's time to call a dage. She shoots him a sharper look and digs her heels in, asking if they truly can't keep going, because she refuses to let the day crash to a miserable end. Spotting her grit, he leans in and asks if she'll keep charging through the dungeon with him, and the moment he says it, she lights up and says yes without hesitation. Inside, he finally exhales, relieved her spirit still hasn't snapped. With their choice locked in, Tsukasa practically drags them forward, and the two plunge deeper into the creepy, wooded dungeon. From afar, Togen Natsum watches the pair, unseen. She came ready to leap in at the first sign of trouble, but now she can finally breathe easy. Her intervention isn't needed. With a satisfied breath, she decides it's time. She files her report and heads out, and the scene below jumps to Kaikeru and Tsukasa in the middle of a fight, cutting down a whole pack of wolf-like monsters with zero effort. Tsukasa can't believe what she's seeing, staring at him and asking if that skill is something special. He grins and says yeah, it's a unique ability he'd been saving, hidden away like a trump card. She asks if it's really okay to spill a skill like that, and he looks away fast, insisting it was just a slip-up. Yeah, sure. Tsukasa grins and needles him. So you've fallen for me. And he finally admits the truth. He hasn't been completely honest, while they keep hacking through monsters nearby. Their route finally opens up, monster after monster laid behind them, until they burst into view of a huge, ornate pair of doors. Tsukasa throws her weapon up in triumph, shouting that they're here, and Kaikeru stands poised right behind her, ready to strike. She stares across the endless snowfield, clocking that nothing's changed and that no boss is anywhere to be seen, until Kaikeru snaps her back to reality and warns her to stay sharp, because foes love lurking just past the entrance. That warning proves dead on. An unseen force suddenly slams them from multiple sides, and they're both thrown straight into a full defensive fight. The attack snaps shut just as fast as it started, and all that's left in the snow is a nasty dark splatter, nothing more. He asks if she saw it and she admits she didn't. Rage and disbelief hit him at once as he swears he was on high alert and there's no way he could have missed a thing. He snaps to the truth fast, clocking their foe as a stealthy wolf-type monster, and Tsukasa's grim face confirms his call, no doubt at all is. As if his words lit a signal in the air, a translucent wolf crawls into existence behind him, its body flickering like a ghost. He slaps a name on it, a stealth wolf. Then he realizes that its eerie howl isn't just spooky, it's the call that drags the whole pack to him. When the call hits the air, a pack of living wolves charges out of the snowy plains, and he speaks to their leader he can't even see, calling it out for hiding its true game and spawning wave after wave of wolves to do its bidding. Tsukasa doesn't argue, his face hardens as he agrees with the theory. They burst into the chaos and smash into the wolf pack, and he barks that the only way they win is to hunt down the original stealth wolf and cut it down. She finally gets it, this whole thing isn't a fight at all, it's a deadly hide-and-seek, and they've been the ones hunting all along. He snaps a trap shut at once and hurls a blazing sigil straight into the beasts, scorching them as it erupts in the middle of the pack. Then, when the smoke finally thins, she swiftly counts the survivors. 9-10, and she knows, for sure, the whole pack keeps regenerating without end. She's getting slammed by the onslaught and her mind is sprinting with it, because the real target blends in so perfectly, there's no way to react and they can't even search for it. Then boom, he yells her name, Suki gaze and demands she hold off the pack alone for just 10 seconds. She doesn't hesitate, she's in. While she tangles with the wolves, he bolts out of the clash and carves a fresh sigil, a cutting version meant to spring a whole new trap. He barked his orders, double-checking that his sigils were enough, then shoved Tsukasa to go even faster, pushing her until she hit her absolute limit. When his call hit, her eyes flared with fierce determination as she refused to back down. The sigils detonated like a thunderclap from hell, ripping the earth open and wiping out the whole wolf pack in one brutal blink. Then the shockwave blasted both of them airborne while Kaikeru screamed her name. Before she could even breathe, a lone, blazing wolf materialized out of nowhere and crashed into her with a brutal lunge. Panic hit her like lightning as she realized she had to rip it apart before it could spill her location, but the strike landed, and she screamed in agony. Kaikeru caught her mid-fall and praised her for keeping it together, but he cursed that they'd lost sight of where the boss was, until Tsukasa looked up, grinned with confidence, and said the pack was gone now, so she could lock onto the howl again and find its spot the moment it called. Kaikeru heard that and told her to stop stressing because he had a plan. As she stared at him, it hit her like a wave. Everything felt electric. Fighting side by side with him was pure thrill, and that rush in her chest felt exactly like love. In that exact moment, it felt like she was finally meeting the real Kajura Kaikeru for the very first time. Her resolve turned to steel. She locked eyes with him and fired a serious question. Would he team up with her for real? Staring out at the bleak wasteland, Tsukige Tsukasa fixes her eyes on Kajura Kaikeru with raw, earnest hope, then admits she's never even thought about joining any party except Holy Sword, and straight up asks him, Oni-Achin, will you officially team up with me? What? Yeah, thanks for the offer, but give me a little time, she says, making it clear her first priority is the stealth wolf. Tsukasa agrees, yet her smile fades into a heavier, more thoughtful look. Decision gets shoved aside and they rip back into the hunt, sweeping the empty plains, Tsukasa spotting they've lost their quarry again, and now he's left wondering what move they make next. He glides forward with quiet confidence, beckoning her to move like a shadow. Then he leans in and hisses that he already knows where the creature is, and all he needs is her help to push deeper. She lights up, grinning at him like he's her hero, and you can feel her confidence snap back into place. She tells him he's seriously amazing, and she's putting everything on him for the fight that's about to explode. Trust gets slammed right away. An enormous, ghostly wolf monster with blazing fur erupts onto the field in front of her, and she doesn't back down, daggers out and locked on for a fight. Up on the high ground, Kaikeru watches everything play out, sword already in hand. Then he snaps his fingers and slams the next step of his plan into motion. His move makes the wolf monster balloon into a massive, spectral giant, looming over everything like a nightmare come to life, and Kaikeru watches, fully sure it's exactly what he meant. This whole thing was planned. When the giant beast lunges, Tsukasa rockets into action, blasting up high into the air. Then, right beneath her, a glowing magic sigil ignites, stamped with 4 arrow symbols that expose what the trash really is. She rockets down at the tangled beasts, the hulking wolf and the smaller one that just slid in beside it, and from his perch, Kaikeru watches as his partner dives in to hammer the strike. She drops like a comet, pure blur and lightning, and Kaikeru, standing far off, can barely even follow her. Still, he's convinced she'll land it. With a fierce cry, she throws herself fully into the attack. As she drops through the trap's shimmering energy, her face hardens into pure, laser-focused determination. Daggers flash as she steadies herself, ready to rain down the finishing blows on the trapped beast below. The fighting finally ends, every monster drops. Kaikeru sprints to her side, shouting her name like it's life or death. He locks eyes with her, desperate for proof, and then he exhales, "We did it." She stands in stunned silence as the last flickers of light die out around her, and the broken remnants of their defeated enemies lay scattered. She turns to face him, and a sweet smile blooms on her lips. "Thanks, Oniai-chan," she says, warm as sunshine. Later on, right outside the Riai's building, they finally lay out what went down in that battle, because once the listener gets it, everything that happened clicks into place. On a terrace cafe, the branch chief slides into her seat with Kaikeru and Tsukasa, then beams, relieved they both came back in one piece, while Togen swoops in beside them with a tray and starts laying out his ideas. The branch chief snaps to attention and stares when Toga Natsum shows up, and Natsum tells him flat out, she's a maid when she's not on observer duty. Then she whips around to Kaikeru, spilling how deeply she's been relieved he's safe, shocking him completely. As Tsukasa stares uneasy, Kaikeru wheels around and asks if she really thinks Natsum's maid outfit is just a hobby, and she shuts that down fast. But then he admits he thought it was weird too, because Tsukasa didn't wear her usual observer uniform. He stands next to Tsukasa, who tilts her head up and asks if he's nervous, and he nods like he's letting her know her guess hits the mark, at least a little. Now the whole crew's huddled at a cafe table, and Togen Atsum stands right beside them, all ears. Then he leans toward Tsukasa and asks, "So, do you get along with everyone at this branch?" She shoots past his question, leaning in with a laser stare, and then reminds him. She still hasn't gotten his answer, so she demands it again, straight to the point. Will he team up with her and form a party? He glances aside and rushes out an apology for keeping her waiting, and the branch chief who overhears them snaps her head over, stunned, asking if they really were talking about starting a party. He finally blurts out his answer. He refuses to form an official party at all, and then Tsukasa drops the truth. She already has one she used to belong to, and her whole mission is to reunite with them. When he hears the refusal, the branch chief jumps in, grills him about why he's so hesitant, and insists it'll be totally fine. She hammers her point home, lays out every reason a party is worth it: faster, smarter leveling, and the teamwork grind that toughens you up for real. Then she turns to Kaikeru and warns him straight. If he keeps trying to go it alone, he'll never learn how to use skills meant for team combat. Then she ties it straight to his dreams and flat out says, if his big goal is to get back into Holy Sword, Tsukasa's offer is a win, no strings attached, just pure benefit. He snaps at the idea, demanding to know if she really thinks he'll take advantage of Tsukasa's kindness, when he knows he'll leave her sooner or later, while Tsukasa himself freezes in shock the second he hears the name Holy Sword. Right as the argument is about to heat up, Tsukasa locks eyes with him and tells him straight to his face she doesn't mind. Her face lights up, those eyes gleam with pure grit, and she straight up says that if his condition is the only price for us to form a party, she'll take it without hesitation, because she refuses to let something that small stop them from teaming up. He stares in silence, his face unreadable, then wrestles with the idea that he always grows by listening to others, while wondering what it would even feel like to build a party with someone new instead of his old holy comrades. His mind is made up, straight to business. He speaks to her formally, lays his intentions bare. He wants to team up with her. Suki gaze. He nods and confirms it. Tsukasa, craving that last shred of certainty, asks if he really gets that he'll be helping her chase her dream. Then the branch chief seals it as done, and Tsukasa bursts into a grin, shouting her proud, happy yes. With the deal locked in, Tsukasa instantly whips around to the branch chief and asks straight up if she and Riai's will join their side too. She stares at the invitation like it's hit her like a truck. Then the branch chief tells her, I tried to drop my doubts and I asked Tsukasa if you'd be okay to join. Tsukasa's eyes light up, practically beaming, and she gushes, more members, that's perfect. Then the branch chief steps in, makes it official, and admits, yeah, we really do need a tank after all. The second she agrees, Tsukasa explodes up from her seat, arms flying wide like fireworks, screaming that it's finally their party, her dream unfolding right in front of her. The buzz finally calms down, and the branch chief jumps in to manage the paperwork for the logistics, then fires the first real question: what do they call their new party? Tsukasa whips his head toward Kaikeru and demands that he take the lead and make the call. After a long, tense silence, he decides the question, then drops a single, lingering word like it answers everything. She lays out his reasoning, straight up admitting that chasing the past can feel embarrassing, but right now it's fueling him more than anything, and when they hear the name, they light up with approval. Tsukasa says it sounds awesome, and the branch chief nods like, yeah, that's perfect. Next thing you know, the branch chief announces they're officially the party members of Vestige. And Tsukasa, grabbing that friendship moment with both hands, proposes they trade contact info. Standing there with her brand new party, the branch chief flipped open a file and read her like a headline, Tsukigase Tsukasa, 14 years old. Her eyes snapped wide as she locked onto the branch chief, then a wild, wrong idea started forming in her head. Male. That cracked Kaikeru up, and he told Tsukasa he just knew she'd never spot that the branch chief was a girl. So when the chief kept chuckling, Tsukasa went red-faced, pointed, and blurted out, "Why your boy?" Up in a glassy high-rise office above the city, Rizajino got the news, and her face stayed stone-calm as she took it in. Then she learned the truth. Kaikeru had pulled together a party. Elsewhere, Ashitari Yukiko rushed a report to Toganatsum, admitting she couldn't say no to her cute kohai without her lady knowing. Since Kaikeru hadn't come home, she tapped her connections to track him down and ordered Natsum to keep watching him. Then her mind snapped back to Kaikeru, an adventurer idiot, no doubt, and yeah, she couldn't deny how irresistibly cute that was. But the second she faced that huge, chaotic structure, her smile vanished because she was sure he still wasn't ready for a place like this. Her thoughts were instantly smashed apart when two hulking, bird-like monsters swooped down, their ornate, mask-faced visages looming over her. She didn't hesitate for a second. Dark energy tore out of her body, twisting into shadow claws that shredded the creatures in an instant, and when her strike landed, she coldly barked one word, "Dies." With the last sparks fading and feathers swirling away, her determination snapped into focus. If Kaikeru was closing in, she'd have to finish the job before he could get his hands on them. She cleared the way and quickly linked back up with Kokiri and Natsum. Then when Kokiri demanded, "Is it safe?" Yukiko flashed a laid-back peace sign and told them it was all good, no worries at all. She decided to keep the whole thing under wraps from her companions, convinced Ko would lose her sharpness the second she learned the truth, and when Toganatsum urged them onward, Itomi Kokiri slipped in and quietly agreed. With that, she and Kakor pushed ahead, their faces set in grim, laser-focused determination. Across town, a massive skyscraper stabbed the night sky like a dark beacon. Inside, Kejiro Kaikeru, now dressed in a sharp suit, just sat there and listened while his sister burst with pure excitement, saying this was her first time doing something like this and gushing over her own dress. He said the outfit was seriously something, and she grinned back that it fit her perfectly, because honestly, she's just too cute. Then she snapped her gaze to him and noticed he couldn't sit still, so she asked what was wrong, and he finally admitted that unease had been haunting him for years, a deep, long-time struggle with necties. Right when their talk hit its peak, the branch chief swept in looking stunning in an elegant gown, to ask if they were ready, and Kairu's sister lit up, shouting that she was ready as could be. With the three of them finally together, the branch chief bellowed that it was time to roll out, straight for the vestiges, for their first big battle. A wild story kicks off with raid battles, huge, full-team operations where different parties combine their strength to storm a terrifying dungeon as one unstoppable, massive force. In that massive, buzzing hall, Hajenko spun around, staring in awe, and asked Kajura Kaikeru if there were always this many parties crowding together. Then Kajura Kaikeru smiled and said tonight was different, mainly because of the superstar standing at the center. Right outside the hall, a young woman in a high ponytail beams as she introduces herself, cheering along as Kuryu and Jessica, the raid organizer, share how thrilled they are with how the whole event turned out. Meanwhile in the crowd, the raid's president's daughter clocks Jessica's youth, then turns to her foreign friend Aura and says it like it's no surprise. Sure, Aura looks perfect and innocent, but she's a witch with real chances. He clears it up fast. Jessica's the face of the raid, but her father's the real boss, and Ko shoots back, asking if that means they'll get sponsored and paid. Kairu nods and confirms it. Then he drops the plan. They're chasing that big achievement from wiping a high-ranked dungeon, and raid battles are where it gets brutal. Thanks to a huge crew of solid allies, they can afford to haul along one or two fresh rookies and carry them through. She leans in and tells him that's exactly why the pay's so insane. She needs adventurers who can handle more than the usual risk. It's a perfect trade. The recruits hammer out real experience in a top-tier zone, and she gets to lock in her own achievement too. Ko listens, eyes narrowing like she's piecing it all together. Kaikeru admits the whole thing feels a little unfair, then quickly shuts it down, saying it's not his place to judge, especially after Japan's top party practically carried him. Meanwhile on stage, Jessica keeps adjusting her dress and beams about how honored she feels to meet all these amazing adventurers. Then she admits the truth. She's grateful, but they've gathered more recruits than expected. Before all this, she even grilled Rizy about whether they'd be taking part when she went to register a vestige. Dress suddenly flips the script with a formal declaration. Because the response is so massive, she announces that tomorrow, every future raid member will have to pass a selection test. That announcement hits the crowd like a punch. Everyone's stunned. Jessica snaps that the test is going to be all about duels, and out of every person here, only 20 are getting picked. Ko's horrified at the idea of people getting sent home, but Kaikeru stays ice calm and says this happens all the time. Then the Riazai president's daughter steps away to greet others, and Ko panics instantly. She decides she has to cram in as much food as possible right now, before her luck runs out. While the room buzzes with chatter and the clink of glasses, Kaikeru slips back, eyes blazing as he scans for allies and rivals who might be waiting in the same crowd. He couldn't help but feel nostalgic, but he dumped all the social stuff on Ko, and now a bad feeling hit him. Getting kicked out of Holy Sword could blow everything up, and as he paced, he could only pray nobody found out while he tried to figure out what to do next. Right as his thoughts were about to spiral, a young woman in a school uniform nearby started muttering through her panic, terrified she wouldn't make it to the raid. Then he spotted it. Tsukigase wasn't the only student here, because the girl, frantic and unfocused, blurted that she had to win even as she crashed into someone. The hit ripped through her and she stumbled forward with a sharp cry, then she tripped and crashed, blasting a plate of food into the air. Kaikeru yelled as she slammed into another guest who was already down, and the collision sent that person crying out in agony. She dropped to her knees the second she hit the ground, blurting out non-stop apologies, and the man lying there only asked what set her off like that, then told her to breathe and calm down. Tears spilled into her eyes as she blurted out her crisis, confessing she was a wizard and begging to be allowed into the raid, because her weakness and past duels were tearing her apart with non-stop stress. Hikaru listened, nodded like he got it, then told her, "I'm a rearguard too." He admitted plenty of rearguards aren't great in a duel, and he reassured her it was totally fine. They'd lay out the whole selection plan, because the organizer wasn't hunting for the strongest duelists, he was hunting for the best match. He told her they don't just toss every loser out. If she could get paired with someone who'd highlight what she can do, she'd still make it in even after a loss, and that explanation left the girl staring like, wait, really? He slid her a fresh plate of food, told her to stop panicking and just put on a great show, then tossed in a playful warning, don't spill a single drop else. She grabbed the plate, thanked him, and admitted, yeah, his words had eased her down, at least a little. Hikaru replayed his own words in his head. Sure, he'd told her all that, but as a C-rank trapmaster, he basically felt like he'd already got the win in his pocket, so both of them agreed to give it everything. Across the room, Kuryu and Jessica spotted Rise Agino and shouted her name, thrilled that her friend was finally stepping in, and Agino turned right around to congratulate Jessica for pulling off the whole event. She stands shoulder to shoulder with another young woman, and those gloved hands clamp together like she's fighting off panic. Then the woman asks if she's scared, and Jessica Kuryuin shoots back that she's here for one reason. It's the other woman's time to shine. With a quick blush rising, she bristles at being treated like a kid and snaps that once this mess is over, and her father finally quits the company, she'll be his equal at last. The branch chief just nods along. Next, the branch chief snaps her focus to Agino, and she admits she took Kairo in only because Agino vouched for him. Then her confidence crumbles as she blurts out her worries. Was it really a smart move to let a trapmaster into their ranks? Agino insists she just proved her worth, but the branch chief waves it off with a grin, saying Agino is still just a kid who can't see what Kaikeru's real words mean. Meanwhile, in the dueling arena, Kajura Kaikeru is declared the winner. He towers over his fallen opponent, silently cursing the fact that he had to throw out his arrow symbol, praying nobody clocked how quietly he used the skill. Raid Commander Heyudu locks in with sharp focus, staring at the strange attack he just witnessed, totally thrown off, while beside him, a young girl with her hair in buns rants about someone getting beaten by a trapmaster, then reluctantly admits, yeah, Kaikeru's not half bad. What? His victory seals it. Kairo gets greeted by an over-the-moon Tsukasa, who cheers for her Oniai-chan and gushes about how easy the win looked. Kairo just smiles, takes the praise like it's nothing, then says Riazua's match is up next. Tsukasa grins and pushes the idea, let's go cheer for her. They scramble to find a spot as the next matchup gets announced, Wizard versus Paladin, and Tsukasa blurts that she's never seen Agino fight. Kaikeru admits he hasn't either, but the second his eyes lock onto the arena, recognition hits hard and his face lights up as Agino's opponent steps forward. The moment the duel kicks off, Kaikeru jolts in shock, because the wizard staring down Agino is the very same anxious girl he'd egged on the day before. Right next to him, Tsukasa throws his arms up and loudly cheers, begging Agino to put on a killer show. The wizard throws her hands up and summons a bow of pure, shimmering light. Agino stares, stunned, no arrow at all. Still, the wizard raises that glowing weapon and fixes her focus like steel, ready to unleash a fight. She fires a blinding energy blast from her light bow, and the impact hits so hard Tsukasa can only gasp, like, can Agino even survive something this brutal? Kaikeru watches without blinking, quietly realizing his earlier advice might have never mattered. The paladin digs in and refuses to budge as the attack charges straight at her. Sure, she could dodge, but she chooses to meet it head-on and prove she's got the dignity of a tank. The blast slams into her shield, and with a flash and a roar, dust and light explode everywhere. Tsukasa on the sidelines goes wide-eyed, shouting in shock that Ajino just ate it, then blares out how insanely tough she is. As the smoke thins, Ajino snaps to it. This is where the real fight starts, now that her opponent is close enough to hit. The wizard rockets forward, hell-bent on breaking that shield, but right then a referee storms in and yells for the match to stop. Just like that, the duel gets shut down mid-strike. Kairu can't believe how fast it all ended, and Tsukasa nods hard, saying it could have gone ugly, but both fighters already proved they had the skill to pass with flying colors. Later, down by the locker rooms, Kaikeru leans in and tells Tsukasa he's leaving first, and she just gives him a calm okay as he turns and walks off. He strides down a lonely hallway when a voice snaps out his name, and it turns out to be the young wizard from the duel. She strides up to him, cheeks burning, and blurts out a thank you, then tells him how his advice helped her stay calm during the fight, even when her nerves tried to steal the moment. He shoots back, stunned that he never realized she'd be that strong, then tells her it's a good thing she proved it, because having an ally like her inside a dungeon is pure relief. She tilts her head up at him, a soft, gentle smile blooming as she finally introduces herself, calm and formal, usually true. She tries to thank Kairu by offering him something, but he instantly refuses, saying he never helped for a reward. His eyes snap to her bag, packed so tightly with merchandise, buttons, keychains, and charms that it's all the same smiling, light-haired girl everywhere, and he just stares, utterly baffled. A sudden burst of recognition slams into him, and he blurts, "Yuko." Usually Tiru flinches the second she hears that name, so he shoots her a question, asking if that's what she just said. She gets rattled and snaps that he can't call Ashtari-sen that way, because Yoko is a nickname only her closest friends are allowed to use. Then she yanks out a magazine, * Special Holy Sword Report ***, flips to * page 57 ***, and points out the rule like it's gospel. When he admits it's impressive, she doesn't back down. She declares that as fans, they're supposed to respect their idol's wishes. Her face is set in pure stubborn resolve as she fires off her plea again, and this time it finally hits Kaikeru. He goes wide-eyed, realizing she's not just a passerby, she's a die-hard fan of Yoko, the holy sword wielder. At school, Yuzui Tiru steps up and confronts Kejura Kaikeru, magazine in hand with Ashita Yukiko splashed on it. Then she cuts in fast, saying he's not allowed to call Ashitori-sen Yuko like they're close. He admits he started calling her that himself, and now it's just stuck like a habit. Then it hits him like a jolt. This girl has to be a Yukiko fan. Yukiko barrels in on the spot, cheerful as ever, and blurts out that she's sorry for making Kaikeru wait right in the middle of the convo. Kaikeru freezes in shock, while Yuzui just gapes, stunned, and demands to know if he really knew her. Watches them side by side, a bead of sweat sliding down her temple as she whispers his name under her breath. Her soft words suddenly snap Kaikeru and Yukiko's attention. Both of them swivel their gaze straight to her. She looks Kaikeru dead in the eye and says she's heard it all. Yoko is the nickname Ashitari got from his childhood friends. She presses on, insisting she tossed it off as a rumor, because it never shows up in interviews, only whispers from fans who claim they met Yukiko face to face. Her face hardens into a shocking realization. She points at Kaikeru and gasps, "You're the legendary one, the phantom fourth member of Holy Sword." He jerks back, shuts his eyes tight in pure mortification, and begs her, "Please, don't saddle him with that humiliating title." The investigation snaps to a stop when her face contorts in sheer shock. She blurts one panicked word and it spills out of her like a scream. Her thoughts sprint in circles and she blurts the news like it's too wild to be real. Then she stammers, asking if this is a scandal tied to Holy Sword. As she keeps muttering about the scandal brewing, Ashitara Yukiko finally storms in, apologizing for making her wait, and the dark-haired girl with him snaps at Yuzui to stop sinking into that sudden, crushing misery. Kairu's face hardens. He knows he can't wriggle out of the truth. He's been expelled. Usually he'd let people misread him like he's just trying to charm Yukiko, but her blunt companion cuts in and makes it crystal clear he's getting exposed. He snaps his gaze to Yuzui and says he'd rather dodge trouble for now, because he refuses to add more headaches for the Holy Sword. She nods, letting his words sink in, and he keeps talking, saying that if anyone found out he used to be part of it, they'd never leave him alone again. Then he leans in and begs her to keep that secret buried. She nods instantly, swearing she'll keep it secret, and Kaikeru's face lights up with gratitude as he rushes to thank her. With the tension finally snapped into place, the dark-haired girl steps up and grills Kaikeru, does he have a photo of Ashitari, and she adds that Yukiko looks like a seriously tough force. That single question yanks Yuzui straight into a flustered panic, her face blazing red, while her companion just watches, grinning like they already knew exactly what would happen. Later on, the whole crew sprawls in a lounge and Yuzui's still reeling. He can't believe he actually met an Ashitari in person, and it feels unreal. Kaikeru just sinks into thought, replaying the wild rumors about the Holy Sword. The crazy fans, the strange rumors, and the way it all feels straight up unsettling, even when it's somehow coming true. The dark-haired girl whips her head around at their new digs, then blurts out that this is her first time ever sleeping in a hotel by a dungeon, and Yukiko catches it, staring like, wait, did this cost a fortune? The dark-haired girl leans in as Yukiko lays out where they'll stay. Turns out the hotel belongs to the curious, and all of it is tied to Yuzui Teru's studies. She can't believe it, blurting that this sounds less like a hotel plan and more like a special program for the gifted. While they lounge together, Kaikeru grips a device and stares into it like it's the key to everything. Then two men in dark, old-fashioned robes stride up to their table, eyes blazing with curiosity, and one leans in, asking what he's looking at because it looks like a picture of a girl. Leaning in, the blond man's eyes go wide. He demands to know if that picture is the Holy Sword, and Kaikeru jolts, then snaps the device out of sight fast. His dark-haired companion shoots him a quiet warning, stop before you get caught again. Kaikeru whips around, apologizes to Yuzui, and thanks her for saving him. While that's happening, the rogue men get sidetracked by Yukiko's bag, and the blonde blurts out about how insanely big it is. Yukiko just smiles and says it's exactly what she lives for. The dark-haired girl snaps her focus to Yuzui and grins, happily jumping into their conversation instead of just talking to Kaikeru. Then she guesses they're all about the same age. Pacing right behind her, Yuki quizzed Yuzui on whether she usually hunts solo, and Yuzui nodded, saying she lives miles away but still shows up for big raids like the one happening now. The dark-haired girl is blown away by her dedication, and she can tell Yuzui is dead serious about the work ahead, while Kaikeru just listens in a grim silence, knowing full well the high-rank areas they're about to step into are packed with deadly danger. Then she finally spills the real reason she's here. No hesitation, no backing down. She's hunting a specific dungeon drop, the blue elixir, no matter what it takes. When she says its name, it snaps the room quiet, and Kaikeru and Yukiko are caught off guard. Yukiko instantly clocks what it's worth, whispering that it's an insanely rare drop. Then the dark-haired girl presses, just how rare, and Yukiko snaps back in shock, revealing the lowest it has ever sold for on the market was a jaw-dropping 1 billion yen. It hits Kaikeru all at once. This quest isn't just a mission to him, it's something personal. And while he's still processing, Yukiko steps in, her face turning gentle as she asks Yuzui if she's chasing the elixir for someone she loves, because they're sick. With a trembling, quiet voice, she grips the container on her lap and blurts out the truth. She's not saving a stranger at all, it's her own mother. Her explanation keeps pouring out, and the truth is brutal. Her mom can barely even stand now, and the doctors have flat out said there's nothing else this world's tech can do. Kajura finally gets it, her desperation isn't random at all, and now he knows exactly why she was so set on joining this raid. Tears flood her eyes as she turns to him and, shaking, thanks him for truly understanding. With the weight finally off her shoulders, she turns, strides down the hallway, and whispers a soft good night as she slips away. As she's about to leave, Kajura shoots Yukiko a look and says that even in a place like this, she's always rescuing people, right when she needs to most. Flustered, Yukiko blurts out, "That's exactly what I live for." The whole crew locks in their plan for tomorrow and swears they'll give it everything, and when the others shoot their fists up in pure solidarity, Kajura watches them and feels a fresh surge of determination. No way is he letting himself fall behind. The very next day, a huge swarm of adventurers rallies together, and a robed man with fancy glasses strides in like the storm's boss. He takes the lead and shouts that the raid battle starts right now. Right in the thick of it, Kajura and his party lock in with fierce, unshakable focus, ready to swing and survive. Inside the ranks, a young girl clenches her staff so tightly her nerves show, her face caught between sheer fear and unshakable determination. The fight explodes into chaos as an elf-like warrior barks orders to rig a trap, her voice snapping monsters toward Kajura. Then Kajura rockets into the fray, cleanly carving through a small winged creature, and Comrade lets out a proud, approving cry. In the middle of the wild chaos, the raid leader snaps everyone into formation. A priest races in to patch up anyone hurt, and another adventurer watches it all run so clean that he can't help but grin. This raid might end up being a cakewalk. As Kajura Kaikeru walks, he mentally fires off his own attack list: Statue of Heaven's Fall, Murder Mibius, and Whispering Marys, and the weirdness of those names hits him like a jolt. Just as his thoughts start to spin, Ashtari Yukiko's bright voice bursts in, "Oniai-chan." and she's praising him like he's the best, right to his face. Beside her, her dark-haired companion can barely contain herself and insists she wants to rush in and fight too. The squad pushes forward with one clear plan: send the advance party to smash every threat they find until they finally reach the boss's room. Suddenly a voice shouts for Kaikeru, and Ashitori Yukiko snaps to attention, realizing it's their crew that's locked in for the final battle, so she shoves everyone into gear to prepare, and Kaikeru, calm as ever, quietly nods along. The raid leader strides up, snapping at him to slow his roll and save his strength for the boss. Kaikeru fires back, asking straight up if he's even strong, but Kaikeru dodges it, saying he's not part of the main group. The leader doesn't buy it, telling him not to pretend he doesn't understand. He keeps talking, smirking about how every adventurer guards their real trump card like it's sacred, then admits he'd slot Kaikeru into the main crew if he hadn't signed up as a trap master, yet he swears he's still got big plans for him. Then the moment Kaikeru spots his opening, Kaikeru lines in and asks to make a request, because if he's valued this much, he wants a say. Then he lays out exactly what he wants. When they step into the boss's room, the main group's tanks hit the front line first. The raid leader pushes back, saying the usual way is for the advance party to eat the first blows and confirm the danger. As they head straight for that towering pyramid, Kaikeru lays out his plan, because dungeons usually lock you into one theme, like being swarmed with wolf monsters or baked alive by fire monsters. He sweeps a hand over the huge, dead-empty room and points out that this dungeon has no theme at all, which means they can't even guess what kind of boss is waiting. He's terrified it's going to be something brutal. The raid leader weighs it for a second. He even admits Kaikeru's right. Then he whips his gaze to his squad and shuts the request down. That young lady is here. He tells them if there's something to worry about, you save the main tanks for later. Kaikeru thinks it through and realizes their leader is really putting the employer's safety first, and yeah, he gets why. Even with a calm face, he just can't shake the nagging gut feeling that something vital is missing, and right when his thoughts spiral, a scout bursts in, shouting that they've finally found the boss's room. That announcement snaps the whole crowd's focus to a massive doorway, and beyond it stretches a colossal hall, held up by towering, bone-white pillars that curve overhead like the ribcage of a monster. As they push deeper into the eerie hall, the dark-haired companion leans toward Kairu and blurts that this place is downright terrifying, way too dangerous to explore solo. Ashitari Yukiko nods hard, warning everyone to stay sharp, because they have no clue where the boss is lurking. Her warning lands at the perfect moment. Then a hulking white monster, packed with vicious hooked tendrils, drops from the cavern's ceiling like a nightmare, and Kaikeru jerks his head up in panic as another party member screams for everyone to lock into formation. The creature lunges in an instant, pincers snapping straight for the party's main tank, and Kairu's throat bursts into a scream. Dodge. His warning hits a beat too late. He hunkers behind his shield, and then the pincer smashes into it, roaring with terrifying force as the metal groans, bends, and gives way under the crushing pressure. That first brutal hit lands like a hammer, and a jolt of shock slams through the whole rebel party, while the witch adventurer freezes, eyes bulging with terror at just how vicious their enemy really is. A gut-punch realization hits Kajura Kaikeru. He totally misread their enemies. Those whispering mares, the murder Mebius, the statue of heaven's fall. It all clicks at once, and their monsters cut from the same cloth. Raw, overwhelming attack power. His teeth grind in frustration, furious at how he missed it. Realization hits too late as the cavern erupts into chaos and the adventurers get swamped right in front, while a young fighter stands frozen with wide-eyed shock, a fresh scratch burning along her cheek as the battle roars around her. The moment that shot lands, the whole scene curdles into pure horror. One of the party's main defenders drops hard and the chamber explodes with screams. The raid leader shouts that he's dead, his voice cracking with disbelief, while the others recoil in terror. They sprint to their escape route, then bam, it's sealed shut. Out of a bubbling, viscous puddle, a massive, grotesque creature crawls into existence, its gelatinous body hardening on the spot to crush the exit completely. Rising panic erupts as Agino's voice slices through the chaos Kikara, and he bolts past the warnings to fall back, wheels around to the armored knight beside him, and barks, "Step forward." Kaikeru fires back at the raid leader, who just called out his plan. Then Kaikeru reveals the truth. They're up against a death mantis, a beast that snaps into action and slashes anything close by with its blades. They're staring down a grim truth. The mantis already spawned its babies, and if the main swarm isn't confronted, it'll rip into the scattered party at random. With one of their 2 tanks wiped out, they've lost the defenses to keep everyone safe. The plan to have both tanks pin its sickles is dead now, and if they hesitate, then it's mass casualties. With a snap of resolve, he declares he'll take care of one side of the monster himself. Then, as he talks, a blazing star-etched shield of light erupts around his left arm. He whips around to the armored knight, shouting that the mantis packs terrifying attack power and that he can't promise her shield will hold. Then, even with the danger screaming in their faces, he leans in and asks, "So you're coming with me anyway?" What? She nods with iron certainty, saying she just has to follow his lead. Then Kaikeru sees that stubborn resolve in the witch adventurer and suddenly erupts in a desperate cry, her face twisted and wet with terror-struck tears. She snatches the armored knight in a panic, begging him to stop, because if he leaves, she's sure she'll die right there with him. The knight stands firm and tells the crying girl in a calm, steady voice, there are moments when a lady has no choice but to ask. She whips around and sprints straight for the front line, leaving the witch frozen in stunned silence. Her arrival supercharges the defense. Kaikeru hurls his shield into the ground, blasts up a brutal magical barrier, and roars straight at the death mantis, "Come at me." The monster snaps into action. Its huge, side-like limb slams down on the shield with earth-shaking force, blasting sparks and scattering debris everywhere. As the shield holds, Kaikeru clenches his teeth and realizes this thing packs the hardest hit of any rank boss. One wrong redirect and he's finished. The armored knight can't help but marvel at its raw power, while the other adventurer just stares, tense and wide-eyed. Back on the backlines, the party surges into action. The mustached adventurer roars for anyone who can hit from range to back them up, while the raid leader drills the healer priest to pour everything into one job: keeping the tanks breathing. No matter how hard they push, this non-stop battering crushes them. Kaikeru moans as the strain rips through him, and the witch adventurer's smile fades into horror because she knows they're not surviving this pace. Then Tsukasa rockets into the chaos. Seeing how bad it is, she decides she'll buy the tanks one precious opening by distracting the monster for just a single attack. Her strike lands with a brutal thud, and the mustached adventurer blurts out, "Well done," but the death mantis snaps back instantly, swatting her out of the air like she's nothing. Kaikeru can only stare in horror as she goes tumbling away. The punch hurls her spinning through the air, and the anxious wizard, like always, stares in horror, gasping in shock. Reacting on pure instinct, he lunges forward and snatches Tsukasa mid-fall, saving her from the impact, while behind them, one of the other raid members blurts a curse at her reckless move. Once everything finally steadies, Yuzui rushes to Tsukasa and asks, "Are you okay?" Tsukasa answers with a shaky smile and thanks her for saving her, but Yuzui's mind is already racing. She can't stop staring at Tsukasa's skills, even wondering how a wizard could pull off an assassin's move like stealth, like maybe Tsukasa learned it because she looks up to Yukiko. Right then, Kairo's voice slices through the chaos of battle, shouting Yuzui's name. He roars out a desperate plan: stop the monster's arms for one single breath, so someone can slip in that opening and blast a spell from inside its shell. The mustached adventurer snaps to the meaning at once, wondering if Kairo truly wants Yuzui closing in with stealth, because he's not mincing words. If she slips up even once, she'll be in serious danger. Even after the warning, Yuzui clenches her resolve. She tells Kejura she trusts him, convinced he's a decent soul. Then she triggers her stealth skill and disappears into the shadows. As she vanishes from sight, Tsukasa keeps watching and declares, "I'm stepping in too," gearing up to throw his full support behind her. Back on the front line, Kaikeru and the armored knight grind their teeth and hold their ground as the monster pounds them again and again. Kaikeru screams at his companion not to let go, and all he can think about is Yuzui's safety, begging that she doesn't get killed. Then he rips open his own power, arrow symbol X4, and a blazing magic circle erupts right in front of them, while he sprints straight at the target, Tsukasa driving him forward, yelling her name. The spell snaps to life. 4 giant lances of light crash down from the sky, pinning the death mantis, limbs, and carving out the perfect opening for Yuzui to strike. She sprinted over the cracked ground, speeding toward the monster's pinned arms. As she surged forward, the raid leader blurted that they made it. Boom, they'd done it. Fresh hope hit everyone like a tidal wave, and suddenly the party was convinced they could win, as long as they crushed the other arm. But that hope got obliterated the moment Metal screamed and splintered. His armored knight's shield, still clamping down on the monster's other lamb, started cracking under the crushing weight. In a blinding shower of broken pieces, the shield finally shattered to nothing. With one limb finally loose, the death mantis slammed its giant blade arm down like a wrecking ball. Then the adventurers nearby gasped in terror, while Tsukasa screamed, "Rise." He was already maxed out, sweat drenching his face as panic surged while he privately admitted he couldn't take any more, and then Tsukasa's desperate cry for her brother tore through the air as things turned truly critical. When she saw her brother stumble, she burst forward with her sword raised, ready to step in and stop it. But before she could close the distance, a new figure snapped into motion, intercepting the strike, while the witch adventurer planted her feet and stood squarely between the falling blade and the armored knife's opening. The armored knight screamed Jessica's name, tears pouring down her face, and Jessica shot back with iron resolve, Nobody else was going to die on her watch. She screamed with raw power, lunged her staff forward, and blasted a roaring wave of magic straight into the monster's assault. As the massive death mantis slams aside an attack, the adventurers below spot the opening. One of them yells that this deflection is their shot. Tsukasa Tsukigaze doesn't hesitate. She thrusts her hand forward and hurls a spell. Right from the ground, dark, razor-sharp tendrils erupt, snapping into a shadow stitch meant to pin the monster in place. The spell's grip won't last just a heartbeat, so Jessica, the witch adventurer, tightens her focus and claws her mana together, teeth clenched as her reserves hit rock bottom, begging that this last desperate strike will finally land as she lines up her stash. She snaps her spell into motion, and a towering pillar of destructive energy erupts from the ground, swallowing the trapped death mantis whole. Then a brutal shockwave slams through, hurling several adventurers, Tsukasa included, sky-high into the air. The attack lands clean, and the raid leader erupts, roaring victory as he declares both of the monsters huge. Side-like arms are ripped off and tumbling away from their bodies. When the creature finally drops its guard, the rest of the party explodes forward, yelling that it's over now, that all that's left is to crush it, unleashing a relentless storm of fire magic. Right in the middle of the chaos, Kajura Kikaru sprints to the armored knight, drops to her knees and checks on him. He asks if she's okay, and she says she is, no hesitation. Then suddenly Tsukasa plummets through the air, shouting for Riai's. Means closer to her, his face a mask of pure relief. He exhales, and you can hear the gratitude in every breath, thankful she's completely unharmed. As Reize against, she watches with a conflicted face, but the armored knight snaps her focus to the witch who just saved them, then looks at Jessica and gives her a heartfelt thank you. After the assault, the truth hits hard. Death Mantis' head sprawled motionless, its single eye gone dead, and its carapace slick with lingering magic residue from the brutal onslaught. The adventurers face the beast's massive legs, still and unbudging, and the raid leader just freezes, stunned and confused, asking what in the world that was. Then another party member chimes in, rattled and unsure, wondering if they really pulled off the victory for real. Just as Tsukasa thinks he's caught a break, the relief snaps, because before the raid even starts, the tiny mantis creatures descend on their dead parent and rip into it, ravenous and sick. Tsukasa screams in terror, clocking the nightmare. They're devouring their own kind. Kaikeru just stands there, stunned, staring at the horrifying, grotesque scene. As they gorge themselves, the creatures swell and twist, shooting into full adult forms in the blink of an eye. The raid leader sees the nightmare unfold and screams for his crew not to freeze. He snarls that they're not growing as fast as it looks, and that they can be cut down before they finish maturing. With a wild mustached grin, the adventurer shouts his war cry on command, rallying everyone around him. Then the vanguard rockets forward, plowing straight into a swarm of newly matured mantis monsters. From far out she watches the charge close in, and her armored face tightens with pure resolve. She realizes they can't hang back anymore, because if they can smash just one more devastating hit, it might be all they need to turn the whole thing. As the renewed battle erupts into chaos, Kaikeru and the witch adventurer lock in, grim-faced, ready to crash back into the fight. Kaikeru whips around to rise Agino. She's utterly drained, but she'll still squeeze out everything she has left for one last combined blast, and the jittery student wizard beside her nods and offers her own empty reserves too. Kaikeru takes their power in his hands and vows that he's counting on them. Without his defensive arrow symbol anymore, he charges straight into the chaos, eyes locked in like nothing can shake him, because even with nothing to hide behind, he's dead set on not missing a single shot. Kairu launched skyward, poured every ounce of energy into his weapon, then slammed it down in a roaring arc straight for one of the mantis beasts. Right after the chaos, the battlefield goes dead silent, too silent. One lone adventurer whips his head around in panic, weapon up, and yells at his comrades, demanding to know where the rest of the monsters disappeared to. In a blink, the answer bursts into existence in a blinding flash. Pure white light detonates from the cavern's heart, swallowing everything in sight and blasting the scattered adventurers flying from the brutal shockwave. Bursting out of that blinding light, the battered adventurers finally spot something they know. One of them, dead tired yet shaking with relief, points it out, the gate that leads out of the dungeon. That moment hits and pure joy explodes through them. Kaikeru and the rest scream in triumph, crying their hearts out because they actually made it, against odds that should have crushed them. They did it. But the relief tastes bitter, weighed down by deep exhaustion. An armored knight, a jittery student wizard, and Tsukasa all wear the battle's damage on their faces and bodies, breathing hard and somehow still standing. Exhausted, the whole crew stumbles out of the dungeon's mouth, yanking themselves away from the desperate fight they just survived. And beneath the huge, star-filled sky, one of them can't help but mutter, half in shock, "We actually made it back, alive." What? The ride back isn't a victory lap at all. The cheers are gone, swallowed by a heavy, silent march. The surviving raiders move in quiet formation, carrying the shrouded body of their fallen comrade. During that heavy, silent march, the healer priest closes in on Kaikeru and tells him, "Thank goodness you're here, because without you, we can't lift our fallen friend and take him home to his family." With a heavy, steady stare, he admits he was the only one who ever knew about that monster, and the priest nods, grimly saying that a proper return is all they can squeeze out for a fellow adventurer. The priest spills his own regret, asking himself if everything would have turned out differently if he'd spotted the dungeon's theme sooner, or if he'd still had the nerve he once swung around with his holy sword. And Cairo admits it, he honestly can't say whether any of it would have changed a thing. He tries to soothe everyone by saying they all did what they could back then, but to undo what happened, he insists, you'd need the power of God, and even so, Cairo just won't speak, the crushing weight of responsibility pinning him down. But while he's still wrestling with the sting of his own so-called failure, something wild is happening elsewhere. Tsukasa, Hajinko, and Ashutri Yukiko are standing their ground against a swarm of creepy, otherworldly monsters. And the scary thought won't leave. One of them might be able to tackle this nightmare alone. Elsewhere, Kajura Kairu gets swallowed by self-loathing. His thoughts spiral into pure inadequacy, convinced he's still weak, and haunted by the fear that he let something unforgivable slip and hurt his comrades. His troubled thoughts get smashed by a sudden presence, and right when he starts panicking about how to catch up, his eyes catch a folded paper drifting in the air, then everything points to the figure standing under a tree. Itomi Kokiri whips around to face him, clutching the paper object in her hand, a soft, teasing smile lighting up her face as she locks eyes with him. He blurts her name in shock, Kokiri, but she shoots him a quick look and presses a finger to her lips, shutting him up instantly. Now she's right in front of him, clocking that troubled look on his face, and she can tell something's eating at him, so she pushes for somewhere they can talk right away. As they head forward, she wastes zero time and blurts out if anyone died, staring at them with a heavy face that says every time it happens, even for her, she still can't ever get used to it. He doesn't try to wriggle out of it, he admits it's true, and that seals her suspicion for good. Then he adds bluntly that he's not feeling well either. His eyes drift as the past crashes in, and he realizes he hasn't seen that person since that day. Then his mind whips to a memory of standing beside a Genko. Kokiri flips the whole mood and drags up an old grudge. She apologizes for vanishing without a proper goodbye, then cracks a smile at Riley and admits she's still plenty mad about it. She keeps going, dropping a theory like a bomb. Maybe he misunderstood her, or maybe the moment got too awkward for him to deal with. Kaikeru just shuts his mouth and stares, stuck in thought as her words sink in. A grim look hardens her face as she squares up to him, and she tells him straight she's got no time to waste. Then she drops a jaw-dropping truth. This winter, they're going to make the very first attempt on the Origin Gate, and Kaikeru's face instantly says everything, like he's been hit. He freezes, staring as her words hit like a punch, then blurts out in disbelief, asking if they're really doing this. Kokiri drops her gaze, and that quiet silence is a heavy, no-turning-back yes. She lays out the whole plan and says they'll hold a selection test this fall to decide which parties get to follow them, because for him to even be considered, his party must be a ring. Her eyes lock on him like a blade, and she tells him to move now. If he's going to try, he better hurry. He holds her stare, and determination snaps into his face. She finishes the message and whips around to leave, panicking that she sneaked out to meet him and has to get back before they catch her. Then he shouts her name, begging her to stop. He demands to know why she'd spill all this to him, but she just freezes, her back still turned, and hits him with a mystery of her own. I'm sitting there thinking, why? He stares at his own mess of feelings and admits it out loud. He wants her kept safe, or at least that's what he told himself. A soft smile flickers across her lips as she spills the real reason. She was bursting with joy the moment she heard he was grinding that hard. Her brutal honesty cuts right through his chaos, and he hurls her name again, apologizing with a heart full of regret for missing her, admitting he chickened out because he was terrified to face her. His vulnerable confession met Itomi Kokiri's steady, gentle but unshakable stare, and she told him she wasn't going to flee anymore either. Her words lit a spark inside him, and he roared that he'd get stronger, strong enough to stand right beside her. He roared that promise one last time, his face set like a war mask of pure determination. Then she answered with a gentle, accepting smile. As she flipped it around, she shot a look over her shoulder and saw him brighten up a bit. She couldn't help but smile seeing him there, and her heart surged with hope for what came next. She stormed away, leaving him alone under the moonlight, and in the wake of that earlier terror his fear got swallowed, replaced by hard, unshakable purpose. But even in that lonely moment, someone was watching him, far away, a hand stretched down toward his shimmering reflection in the dark water as a low voice murmured, approving. The observer, this woman with hair so long it felt unreal and eyes packed with intricate patterns, gave a faint, knowing smile thinking, I love kids who don't know when to quit. Her eyes stayed locked on the boy's reflection in the water, and she mumbled that maybe it was time, just maybe, for the next one, like her words were pointing to something bigger, something hidden. After that brutal raid, Kajura Kaikeru finally snaps back to life. He's rested for 2 whole days. In a hotel room, Branch Chief Itomi Kokuri and Toganatsum greet him, and Kokuri leans in, asking if he's feeling better. He nods and admits she helped more than he can say. Then he wonders out loud why magic healing wipes him out so hard, and Kokuri tells him that's a classic complaint from adventurers everywhere. Man watches the Branch Chief and thinks she must have been wiped out after that expedition too, yet she calmly sips her tea and smiles like she's never going to show weakness. Kaikeru just snorts inside, convinced she's straight up lying. Her expression hardens the second she says his family name, Rise, then she tells him that once the dust settles, she wants to talk about something important with him. He locks eyes with her, fully focused, hanging on every word. Toga Natsum lanes in and tells the Branch Chief she heard this was Kaikeru's first time watching a teammate die, and the Branch Chief immediately looks uneasy, because that's scary. Kaikeru then snaps into the conversation, saying he wants Tsukyuji to come with them too, even as he wonders if she's finally woken up. Out of nowhere, a familiar voice shouts for Oni-chan, because his sister just burst in, running straight into him, and Tojin finally drops a grim truth. Losses are part of their line of work, but they still sting. She asks how he's really feeling, and he tells her he's okay now, yet she snaps him back to reality, warning him not to overdo it after she went through her first loss and barely got out of bed for days. She flashes a soft smile and tells him straight up that their situations aren't the same. Then she just shrugs, says thanks, and makes it clear she's really okay now. Later on, Kaikeru and his sister end up in the same booth at a cafe with the Branch Chiefs, and when Kaikeru's sister lanes in with a legend, the origin gate, thoughtfulness hits her face hard. The Branch Chief tells her no one ever even thought about stepping through that gate, until everything changed the moment the Holy Sword top party showed up. Kaikeru's sister can't believe it. She swears she figured stuff like that only lived in textbooks. Kairu's gaze snaps resolute. He declares his final dream, to stand beside the Holy Sword no matter what, right as they finally move to challenge that goal. His sister meets his eyes with warm encouragement, urging him to stop wearing that sadness, because if they get chosen to fight alongside them, he can make that wish come true. And when he looks back at her, her words hit him like a calm wave, easing the tension in his face. He slides into a seat with his sister and the Branch Chief, and the Chief lays it all out. If their party's vestige gets picked, they won't just be heading for Tokyo, they'll be sent straight to the legendary Origin Gate. She keeps her voice razor serious, warning them that what's coming is going to be deadlier than anything they've ever survived. Her eyes snap to Kairu, dragging him back to that brutal lesson from their last dungeon run, where one wrong move could end everything. She shoves him to think hard. So tell me, is he charging deeper into that death trap, or is he finally turning his sights somewhere safer? She slams down her ultimatum. Sure, the party's brand new, but what they say right now decides whether Vestige stays standing or gets wiped out. And just as anyone tries to open their mouth, his sister's voice slices through the tension. I'll go. His sister fixes him with an unshaking look and reminds him of the promise they swore. Together, they'd roam the wide world of adventurers side by side. The Branch Chief clocks their resolve and doubles down. She snaps out, stone-cold certain that she won't step back, not when it matters this much. She leans in and tells them this mission could be the kind that gets etched into history, an insane chance for the race family. She snaps her focus back to Kaikeru and tells him straight up, when she chose to acquire him, she felt something real in him, and she thinks this gamble is worth every risk. Then she locks eyes and dares him to take the leap with her. His face tightens, and as he hears their words, a fresh wave of resolve surges in his eyes, faith in him locking in like a vow. He stares them both down, fully aware of the danger he called out. Then, with iron certainty, he swears it. Nobody is dying on his watch. The Branch Chief wears a grim face and starts mapping out their next moves, while Tsukasa watches her with a soft, gentle smile. She slides in at the table, eyes locked on Kaikeru as he confirms their next move. They're hunting the road to becoming an A-rank party, starting right now. He insists that the first step is on him. Since he's the party leader, he has to climb to that rank by himself. So Kasa, eyes still on the papers, demands the details. How does a party pull off that rank? The Branch Chief lays it out plain. Sure, my rank matters, but what the party really needs is a track record of wiping a high-ranked dungeon, and that thought freezes him for a second. Can 3 people actually pull that off? He looks at their fresh win and admits clearing a dungeon with a full raid is a whole different beast. Pulling it off with their tiny group is going to be brutal. He taps a pin on the party registration form, sizing up their lineup and plotting a more orthodox party, then lands on the brutal truth: they'll need at least 1 or 2 new members. He leans in, voice sharp, demanding the one thing that matters most: a dedicated rear guard. The branch chief slams in a crucial rule: if they want to reach the origin gate, they can't grab just anybody. The new recruit has to be truly exceptional. A hush drops over the table as all 3 of them stare at this brutal requirement, feeling its weight pressed down on their thoughts. Tsukasa breaks the silence by saying a girl's name out loud, and Kaikeru jerks his gaze up, surprise flashing across his face, because he'd been thinking of the same person. The branch chief clocks the connection and suggests they all shout the name together. He and his crew shouted the name burning in their hearts all at once. Yuzui, just the name, floated between Kaikeru, Tsukasa, and the branch chief, while Yuzui Teru herself sat off to the side, staring hard at the dark, rectangular card clutched in her hand. She was on the phone, talking straight to Heyudu, thanking him for the drop list he'd sent and confirming she'd read every word. Then her voice cracked with disappointment as she told him once again the blue elixir was nowhere to be found. He shot her a grateful smile and thanked her for the invitation, telling her they always loved a real shot at a big adventure, especially since chances like that don't come often. Then he leaned in with one last hope that she'd reach out again. She just fell quiet, and a soft "oh" slipped out as she weighed every word he said. Right before he hung up, he slid in one last request. He asked if the party could meet her, and he begged permission to share her address with them. She didn't pause for even a second. She repeated vestige like it meant something, then told him it was fine to pass her phone number along, and if this was an emergency, get the hospital name where she was staying. After the call ended, a man stepped up, and she greeted him like he was her uncle. The second she slipped her phone away, curiosity hit hard. What on earth did this party want from her? He returned the greeting, and before he could even breathe, she snapped, "How's my mom?" Her uncle said she'd just gone to sleep, and she'd felt surprisingly good all day. Then the news hit her, and all she could manage was a small "I see." For a brief moment they just stood there, staring into the hushed hospital room at the one bed still taken, while he kept glancing at her uncle, and she begged, voice trembling, for him to keep caring for her. His smile vanished the moment he asked if she was heading out again, and when she nodded, saying she had to hunt down another high-ranked dungeon fast, silence hit him hard, worry carving deep lines across his face. He stares down at his niece, Tiru, wearing a grim face, and tells her it's time to hang up the adventurer life. He keeps going, telling her he heard, again, that someone died on her mission, and the regret hits him hard as he apologizes, admitting he dragged her into danger just to protect his younger sister. He snaps that she never should have been stuck suffering out there, waiting outside like this, then tells her bluntly that at her age she ought to be hanging with friends, not risking her life in a job like this. His voice slams into her thoughts, suffer. Her face crumples with panic as she looks up at her uncle, and then she starts to speak. But she doesn't finish her sentence. She whips around and sprints off, yelling an apology and insisting she has to go, while her uncle blurts for her to wait, stunned into silence. She sprints toward a waiting black car, pounding the door as she begs, breathless, for them to let her inside. The car door slammed shut, the vehicle roared down the road, and her uncle's shouting got swallowed up like it never even stood a chance. Safely tucked inside the vehicle with Tsukasa, Natsum, and Kokiri, Yuzui gets hit with one question: "Are you sure about this?" She smiles, thanks them for jumping in, and swears her uncle is a decent man. It's just a matter of time before he gets it, then tells them she'll talk to him properly later. The crew finally reaches a calm, open spot and drops onto the benches, ready to push their talk even further. She stares out over the water, spots the distant city, and points it out as the origin gate. Then her hands start to shake as she clutches a little foil-wrapped rice ball. Hikaru speaks softly, telling her it's a lot to digest and to slow down and think it through, while she just goes quiet, eyes dropping to the floor. She snaps her focus back to the food in her hands and in a soft voice admits the anjai rai was a gift from her father. She keeps going with this voice packed full of awe, telling everyone her dad is amazing. Then she gushes about how he's devoted to her mom, does every bit of housework, and grinds through long hours day after day. She stands by the railing with her back to Kaikeru, and in the quiet, he watches her like he's trying to read her thoughts. He shatters the quiet and flat out says he doesn't see plunging into dungeons and living the adventurer life as some kind of curse. She snaps around to face him and drops her real reason. She thinks this road could save her mother, and she'll take any help she can get, calling him Kajura-san with formal respect. With steel in her eyes, she clenches her expression and pleads, straight, earnest, no doubt asking to join the vestige. He leans in and checks her meaning, asking if she's really ready to team up with them, heading straight to the origin gate inside the Tokyo dungeons in her hunt for an elixir. She stares at the horizon and swears that every adventurer is loved by someone, and that those feelings ride into battle with them, no matter what. Kaikeru leans in, eyes locked, face deadly serious. He grips the cup and his mind wrestles with the weight of this brand new role, because he knows he has to earn that responsibility and rise to it. Seeing his choice, a soft smile blooms on Yujui Teru's face. She grabs their shared dream of hunting the blue elixir and vows that he'll return to his mother safe and sound. With a deep, respectful bow, she seals the deal. Then Tsukasa and Kyukuri look on as Kaikeru steps in, offers his hand, officially welcomes her, and promises he can't wait to work together. Elsewhere in a shattered wasteland of ruins, a stone effigy of a frog-like monster bursts apart in a violent explosion, raining rubble everywhere. Amid the wreckage, a young woman stands her ground, her rapier still buzzing from the hit. She just stares, a little let down, like, what a shame, my opponent was way too slow. She tears her gaze away from the creature's wrecked remains and snaps her focus to the document in her hand, and for a heartbeat, confusion flashes across her face. A notice hits her desk, time to renew her A-rank license. She groans like it's the worst news ever, bangs her fists in disbelief that it's already happening again, and complains that it's such a pain. To make it worse, she'll have to spar, and the association branch is miles away. She trudges through the ruins, huffing and grumbling nonstop, out in the middle of nowhere, stuck helping her granny with everything around the house, and honestly, it's starting to drive her insane. She freezes in place, eyes locked with fierce resolve and aching hope. Then she blurts that the only thing she truly wants is to get to Tokyo already. Right at the Adventurers Association entrance, Togen Atsum, backed by Itomi Kokiri and Ashura Yukiko, steps forward and fires off her report. The Holy Sword Party is back, fresh from cleanup duty. Inside, Raid Commander Heidu grabs their attention and thanks them, praising how they smashed the unmanaged monster problem across northern Kanto. Then he sighs like a man haunted by what-ifs. If only those monsters would stay put, he could finally see his grandson. Right beside him, Yukiko leans toward Kikuri and murmurs that the president is way older than anyone expected, like some crusty old geezer. That brief calm shatters the moment he and Natsum whirl toward the big window facing the city, because in the sky, a massive, swirling storm of dark energy churns over everything. Heidu's face hardens, and he snaps that it's finally time to hit the Origin Gate's core. Three women stride down a corridor as Kokiri quietly wrestles with the weight of his own words, murmuring about the expedition to the Origin Gate that's coming next. Natsu's face darkens as a heavy memory crashes down on him, and while Heidu keeps staring at that ominous portal, he admits he'll never forget the day it first showed up over Tokyo. She snaps her gaze to him, desperate for answers, and asks straight up, is it true, if we clear the Origin Gate, do all the other gates shut down too? Honestly, he's got no clue, just a wild theory. But he's sure the mana spilling from the gate warps the space around it, and he's pushing her to take a shot with zero promise it'll work. He thanks her for considering it, promises to back her fully, and Natsum locks eyes with him, no wavering at all, saying they'll do whatever it takes if it helps people. Plopped behind his desk, he tells her they've just posted the recruitment for the support parties, then admits, through gritted teeth, that he has no clue how many will actually brave that deadly mission. Hearing that, Yukiko snaps that it spells trouble, even calling the volunteers cowards, and then Kokiri just smiles, calm as ever, swearing people will show up by fall, while Natsum waves it off like, don't worry. The car rockets down the road, guardrail hugging one side, while a huge open stretch of land yawns out ahead and a steep, tree-covered hill rises hard on the other. Inside the car, Kaikeru gripped the wheel and thanked Kokiri for riding with him. Then she shrugged and said she didn't need gratitude, because she had to renew her license anyway. She slides the car into the parking spot, straight up saying it's a lifesaver to have someone with her who knows the area like the back of their hand. Now they're standing right at the finish line, the Hakariku branch of the Adventurers Association, and Kaikeru blurts out that he's never stepped foot in this branch before. At a reception desk inside, Kyukuri tightened her grip on her B-rank license renewal and filled out the forms. Then the receptionist pointed her toward the ability gauging room. As Kokiri steps away, the receptionist snaps her focus to Kaikeru. He doesn't beat around the bush. He straight up says he wants to take the A-rank exam, and that request totally stuns her for a second. She snaps back to herself, bolts to the terminal and sees it. He's finally hit the recommended level, but his request is unheard of. No one has ever pulled off an A-rank trap master before, and he wants to straight up skip ranks. He calmly lays it out. His level shot up because of the experience points from that recent raid, and when the receptionist asks whether he's ever been in an arena for high-ranked duels, he nods. He's done it plenty of times. Once she saw he had the credentials, she pointed him to exactly where to go and spelled out what it would take to move up. If he wants to skip a rank, he has to snag 3 straight wins. She snatches the access card she hands over, and the meaning hits like a truck. Because the training room only lets you in once a day, this one trial is going to drag on for at least 3 grueling days. He stood in front of the exam room, thoughts storming as the trial waited. This air rank exam was about to decide everything. He weighed every possibility. Either his opponent was another candidate or some full-fledged day ranker, and no matter what, he braced himself and made up his mind. He'd just have to try. Meanwhile, in the next waiting area, her opponent stared at the screen and let out a tired sigh. She just wanted to win fast and get out of there. Her eyes landed on the matchup, and the name on the screen hit her, Kijura Kaikeru. Then the real shock, his class was listed as Trap Master. He dove into everything he could about his opponent, Kazari Kyuko, the fencer, and realized this was his biggest wall yet. With only 5 S-rank adventurers scattered across all of Japan, E-rankers sat at the top of the top. Kazari's class, a speed-crazed vanguard, but he didn't flinch. He was ready to defend every strike. Still, he knew landing a hit of his own would be a brutal uphill fight. With everything prepped and ready, the two fighters stormed into the arena and stared each other down across the grid floor, while an official voice boomed through the air, blasting the command to get ready. She studied them mind-sprinting, remembering how she'd tangled with plenty of trap masters in the lower ranks. None of them, no matter how ruthless, ever cracked the ear rank exams, so she shrugged it off and decided it didn't change a thing. Her plan was razor simple: dodge every one of his traps, no hesitation. The moment the start signal blared, she exploded forward at breakneck speed, full-on lunging like a storm. She streaked through the air like a comet, snapping the gap shut with one killer leap, while Kaikeru was already moving, his hand slamming down to spring the trap. She clocked his move instantly, textbook slick, and meant to corner her into fighting exactly how he wanted. The moment their blades slammed together, Kaikeru tasted her power and realized he'd been right to fear it. Then he smirked and goaded her, daring her to beat him, while his free hand quietly laid yet another trap. He stayed locked in place and his plan clicked into motion. Then right on the floor between them, a trap burst to life, glowing like an arrow aimed straight at his opponent. He watches Kazari Kyuko clock his trap, right as it springs off his own body, and she blurts out how this insane gambit isn't going to backfire on him. He says nothing because the only way he survives is staying one step ahead and keeping her rattled. She doesn't let herself hesitate. She lunges with her blade out, and the trap on the ground ignites, snatching Kazari off guard in an instant. She whips her body midair, contorting just enough to dodge his blade in the trap that's blasting up. Then, with a hard grunt, she slams onto the ground like she's finally out of danger. Her face snaps into a furious snarl, and she erupts in a roar at him, furious at his tactics, making it crystal clear he better not underestimate her. With a blur of speed, she launches off the ground, just barely dodging the traps as they go off, right as they're about to hit full force. He stares at the wreckage, eyes locked on where she stands. All it shows is a tiny graze on her cheek, because the moment his opponent started moving, she barely avoided disaster. She drops in behind him and the shock hits hard, so close that the trap almost nailed her, yet somehow she dodged it after setting it off. He stares in disbelief, because that kind of speed is nothing short of insane. He finally gets it. His strategy is dead on arrival. Setting traps means nothing if she just dodges them the second they spring. Across the arena, Kazari clocks the same truth. That arrow trap is the problem, so she has to hunt for an angle where she can strike without ever stepping into its range. Two fighters square off from far away, and their duel snaps into a brief, breath-stopping stalemate as they reset their game plans. He yanks his trap loose from afar, and Kazari Kyuko has to scramble instantly, because she realizes his power isn't stuck in close range at all. She snaps out a pair of pistols in a flash, seeing them for what they really are. Just another weapon in his arsenal. Her counterattack slams into him with brutal pressure, but he grits his teeth and forces his way forward because he refuses to let this fight linger. He snaps an arrow symbol together with a crushing slash and unleashes a brand new kind of assault. From where Kazari stands, she realizes it. He's blended his trap symbols. Kaikeru is reeling from his attack when she rockets upward, dodging the energy barrage like it's nothing, her speed and sharp eyes leaving him stunned, wondering how a trap master could move like this. He doesn't let her breathe after that aerial dodge. While she's still hanging in the air, he slams in another deadly combo, and this time he burns an arrow symbol with flame. That fiery projectile slams into her, and she has to rewrite her whole plan in midair. Then she clocks it. He can spawn new projectiles by snapping his arrow symbol into other traps, so she flips her mindset on the spot. Now she's not just battling a trapper, she's facing a wizard, and yeah, that's terrifyingly familiar, because she's tangled with wizards more times than she can count. She slams down a fresh trap and the ground erupts into a deadly forest of blades around her, but her eyes aren't on them. She's already one step ahead. Kairu jolts upward, alarm flashing as he realizes she's not just attacking, she's right above him. She dives straight down, rapier first, and slams the advantage into motion, forcing him onto the back foot. He scrambles to parry her rapid strikes, panic rising, and he finally realizes he has to fire off another arrow symbol just to break away and make space. Her face hardens into grim determination. She refuses to give him even the opening he needs. She slams in with non-stop fury, and her raw speed and brutal power finally crush his defenses. He grunts as her blade rips through his guard. He staggers back, realizing it's been ages since someone has shoved the fight into close quarters like that, so hard it almost breaks him. Her speed, power, and stamina blow his out of the water as she looms over him. Kazari steps in, declares this is the end, and tells him, calm as ever, to give up. Kairu refuses to fold, his face turns stone cold, teeth clenched as a silent apology burns in his mind. He can't quit, not when survival is the only ticket to seeing them again, so he braces for her attack with one-track purpose, and when he strikes back, the earth explodes under the impact, sending everything into an all-or-nothing clash. Mid-duel, Kajura Kaikeru whips his guard up and batters away Kazari Kyuko's non-stop barrage. Then Kazari springs high above him, flipping through the air like she owns the sky, and Kajura can't help but think, if this fight taught him anything, it's that. She's terrifyingly fast, she doesn't even fight back, she just dodges and snaps into motion whenever his attacks come flying, and he realizes her strength is pure physical speed. Grit in his teeth, he knows this is sink or swim, right now. An opening, he rockets forward, cutting the gap in seconds, resolve locking into his face as he bellows the command to activate the skilled traps he already set. He thrusts his sword at her, but she slams it aside with her bare hand, no hesitation, and he roars that she's not getting away, snapping his focus past that failed swing as an arrow-like symbol suddenly flashes on the ground beneath her. A blinding flash erupts from the symbol, then from its center a dark, star-shaped projectile rockets out and charges straight for Kazari, and with a sharp grunt she jumps back just in time. The projectile detonates in a searing blaze, and it hits her right in midair. She gasps in shock as the blast wave slams into her. As Kaikeru gets her off balance, he pounces on the opening, he shouts, and another magical sigil erupts at his feet. Kazari's eyes go wide as a brutal surge of power yanks at her without mercy. A hidden power rips her through the air, flinging her straight toward Kaikeru, who's waiting in the middle of a violent storm of dark, shadowy energy. Just like before, Kazari's body suddenly ignites with a fierce glow, then a synthetic voice cuts in, saying the damaged threshold is history, and the simulation is shutting down for good. The fight ends and Kairu lays out his master plan, shocking Kazari as the dust settles. He'd already clocked her power lamp, and since it wasn't built for combat, he figured she couldn't spot the pattern of the trap skill he set. Bowed deep, he thanked his opponent for the fight. Kazari Kyuko, her face hiding in shadow, could barely squeeze out just one broken word. Her calm snapped in an instant, her face twisted with raw rage, and she screamed at him, demanding to know what he was doing while shouting that she'd already lost. She kept blasting through her tirade, cursing the brutal pain of having to come back for round two, and with one last, furious scream, she spun around and stomped off. He watched her storm off, clocking that menacing glare, yet somehow he knew she had her reasons. Then it hit him. She was probably younger than him, somehow masked by that unbelievable strength. And just as she left, she hurled one last warning, demanding he remember what she said today. All alone now, he stared at what he'd done. He won, sure, but the wind tasted empty in his mouth, and he knew exactly why. He didn't beat her fair, he caught her off guard. He realized he couldn't bank on luck for all three battles, and he snapped to the truth. Just grinding levels wouldn't cut it against the raw power gap between different jobs. He needed a brand new strategy. Later, he finally caught up to Ko, who was walking a step ahead, and she asked how his session went, so he confessed that he'd barely scraped out a win. She flashed him a smile, and he asked how her day went. Ko told him her evaluation went off without a hitch, overfast since they only had to test her skills, and then he nodded like, we both crushed it. Ko glanced at the clock and realized they still had time before their meetup, and Kaikeru nodded right away, like, yeah, they could totally take their time. Just as everything felt calm, a loud, cheerful shout from Oni-chan ripped the moment apart. Kaikeru's sister came sprinting toward them, side by side with Atomi Kokiri and Ashita Yukiko, and Kaikeru could only freeze, stunned to the core by how they suddenly showed up. He scans the whole crowd and demands to know why they're all here. Then his sister shrugs and says they wrapped up their jobs fast and had nothing else to do. He clocks that she's practically glowing with excitement, and she beams back like, yep, absolutely, I am. Then she spills the real reason she's so hyped. Everyone's headed to the hot springs, and Kaikara just watches it all with a soft, barely there smile, like he's already accepted it. Their goal is to build an adventure training hall, and the mission is simple: protect a hot springs town in Inside the hall, the training is going full throttle. Homie Kyukuri and Ashtari Yukiko trade brutal blows in a fierce spar, while Kaikeru and an armored knight watch yell from the sidelines. And Knight tells him it's a joint operation. Riai's teams up with the Adventure Association. The whole facility runs on its own, with a contract that keeps sending adventurers in, so there's always someone inside. Kaikeru shoots back like, so what are we really doing? Are we just guards? As her bout wraps up, he praises Yukiko for pulling it off. Then she squirms, confessing she got shoved onto defense the second her stealth ran dry. And from the side, a voice snaps, all right, time to switch it up. His sister snaps his focus with a tiny knife in hand, daring him to fight and promising she'll beat him next, yet he just stays calm and tells her, go ahead, try. Kyukuri snaps to the question, so what's the guard duty really? And she grills them to make sure their only job is to dive into any dungeons that pop up, plus whether anything strange is hiding in the assignment. The armored knight steps in and makes it crystal clear. If a dungeon shows up in that spot, the adventurers the party sends in get to decide whether they'll take it on. She pushed hard for taking the hot springs town as fast as she could, and Rizea Agino shot back, so you're trying to speedrun it. Because for adventurers, getting into the local dungeon right away is a massive advantage. The debate got totally steamrolled when Agino effortlessly slammed Kaikeru's sister to the ground, and the younger girl didn't miss a beat. She demanded a handicap rematch on the spot. Then the armored knight looked Kaikeru in the eye and said, calm as can be, I'm up next. Pinned to the floor, his sister grabbed the knight's armored leg and looked up with desperate, pleading eyes, begging him if he really planned to handle the guard duty alone. Knight settled in and the plan clicked into place. Sure, only 1 or 2 people might stay there at a time, but she insisted they all head there together this weekend to kick things off, and as Kaikeru's sister listened, a shock of realization started creeping in. Her eyes popped wide and her pupils glittered like stars as the real destination finally landed. Then she burst out, breathless, we can totally bathe in the hot springs. She shot her arm into the air and blurted out, all fired up, that she loved hot springs, and Kaikeru couldn't help thinking, wait, is it really okay to pull a mission with a secret motive like that? Her excitement spilled over as she yelled, I can't wait. Right then, Togen Natsum shoved Kaikeru the rental car keys and promised to bring it back for them, so he thanked her, while Agino chimed in that they'd better remember to bring luggage. They all formed up and took off on foot. Ashitari Yukiko even spotted a bus stop, and Atomi Kikuri immediately demanded, why aren't we driving? Kaikeru just grinned and said he wanted to ride the same public buses the locals use. As they strolled through unfamiliar streets, Hajenko and Itomi Kokuri kept craning their heads around, talking out loud about what kind of town and people were waiting for them. A creeping unease hit him hard and Kaikeru couldn't ignore it. He hated crowds, and the feeling only spiked because he wasn't feeling well. While he tries to board the bus, the crowd shoves him around, and then a girl in a school uniform crashes into him. She blurts out a fast apology, then bolts off as his stern glare locks in behind her. She whips around, and the moment her eyes lock on them, recognition hits. Kaikeru and his sister stare back, stunned by her sudden shout. A little later, the bus lurches into motion, and the same young woman stays locked in her seat, brow furrowed, eyes blazing with irritation as the next stop gets called out. Sitting somewhere else on the bus, Kaikeru can't shake the feeling of someone staring him down. He turns his head and spots the girl from before, eyes locked on him like she's been watching the whole time. He can't help but feel a little awkward, while behind him, his companions murmur that something's off with the girl, since she clearly arrived like she had her own whole party. Yep, he's hemmed in by his sister and all the other women, all packed together on the same seats. The way he's hooked on so many women only fuels the other girl's disdain. She seethes, convinced he's some kind of playboy, and furious that he slipped away from her to a carefree guy. Kaikeru catches the heat of her stare, spots that her smile has snapped into a hard glare, and immediately wonders what he did to set her off this badly. Just then his sister leaned over the seat with a grin, slid him a snack, and sweetly called him Oniai-chan. The sweet little nickname snaps the other girl's attention. Her eyes flare wide as a sudden thought hits, and she starts piecing it together. They don't look like siblings at all. Her mind snaps to one horrifying conclusion. Could he be a lolicon too? The idea hits like poison, and disgust twists her face in instant revulsion. On the bus, Kairu's sister leans in and asks how his meeting with the Kuryu family's young lady went. Then, right as he starts to talk, ice-cold sweat erupts across his skin as a brutal wave of bloodlust slams into him from somewhere he can't even name. Hajinko kicks things off and says Jessica Kuryun is handling it way better than she ever dared to fear. Then the flashback slams in. Jessica stands her ground in front of an attendant, refusing to let even one failure knock her down, swearing she'll become a real proper lady worthy of the Kuryun name for everyone they employ. Ko keeps going, saying it was her job, and confessing how terrified she was that Jessica would get fired. As she tells it, Kairu's face finally warms up because he gets the whole mess, and he genuinely hopes Ko turns into an amazing adventurer. From the seat right behind them, a student girl leans forward with a razor-sharp, suspicious glare and fires a question at Kaikeru. Does he know the girls he's with? He flicks his eyes back and answers that he doesn't, they just met. Her face burns with indignation at his answer, and in her head she's calling him a pervert while berating herself for being this close to him. She just wants him to get off the bus, staring at the windows like, what on earth could his group be headed for? Like her thoughts summoned it, the bus screeches to a stop. Then the final station announcement blares as both Kaikeru's group and a silent, fuming student girl step out. The moment Kikaru's sister steps into town, her eyes light up and she gushes about how charming everything is, while Kikaru and the student girl both soak in the sights with the same wide-eyed curiosity. That student girl, still tailing them, finally blurted out where they thought they were headed. Then they suddenly picked up Ko points ahead, proving the way she swore they had to go. As the group keeps rolling forward, Ko blurts out where they're headed, Kazuri Garden, the inn they'll be sleeping in. And then, way off in the distance, a huge old-school building finally rises into view. That name snaps Kaikeru's focus. His eyes widen as he mutters, Kazari, scrambling to remember where he's heard it before. With Kazuri's name still ringing in his head, that bus student strode right past them and burst into the inn, calling out that she'd returned. Inside, an older woman in a kimono welcomed her to their humble inn and called her Kyuko, but the moment the doorway filled, the greeting snapped shut because the guests were there, and the woman gasped at their sudden arrival. The moment she was back, that older woman grabbed the chance and snapped at Kyuko, take them around the place right now. The woman pressed Kyuko's whereabouts, and Kyuko snapped back that she'd already explained it was a crazy busy day, only for that excuse to get brushed off with zero patience. Right then, one more staff member thrust an apron into Kyuko's hands, and the moment it landed, her tired frustration evaporated, swapped for a dazzling, professional smile as she turned to greet the guests. With practice charms on her tongue, she beamed at the dear customers, ready to lead them straight to their rooms. Kyuko snaps in pure frustration, asking why she's the one stuck choking Hikaru, and before the tension can even breathe, the staff member shrugs it off and kicks off the tour, telling everyone every room has its own bathroom, with one more at the end of the hall, then pointing out the fire escape like it's strictly for emergencies only. They keep heading down the corridor, waving you toward the rooms like it's a mission briefing. She points out the two-person spot, then signals the three-person room right after. Hearing that, Kairu's sister beams and yanks his arm, insisting they're staying right here, while Kyuko watches, cheeks burning, her brain spiraling because she wrongly thinks Kairu's out here with a girl that young. She slams against the sliding door and hurls insults, calling him a filthy pervert, while her friends drift off in the background, one of them saying that at Hot Springs, you're supposed to separate by gender. Kairu, now dressed in a yukata, walks right up to the same staff member and asks, straight up, where he can get a great view, because he's trying to spot the insecurity firsthand and figure out where people keep gathering. Her whole vibe flips into manic, blazing excitement. She suddenly barks that there's a crack in the wall, then yells that from the veranda you can spot a manhole cover leading straight to underground storage, and that shock hits Kaikeru and his sister like a punch. The staff member still twitches with leftover energy when his sister snaps, "What did you do to me?" Kaikeru admits he's clueless, then drops the truth. She'd already lost to him in a spa earlier that day. Her eyes blew wide with shock at the reveal, and she realized the staff member was an A-rank adventurer. Then she practically bursts out about how awesome that is. Hearing the praise, the adventurer just shuts her eyes and mumbles a tired, simple thank you. She's brimming with admiration, then suddenly darts toward the adventurer, eager as anything to suggest they become friends, only for the staff member to snap away coldly and say, without warmth, that she doesn't befriend weaklings. Kairu's sister snaps back that her attitude is nasty and nobody will want her around, but the adventurer fires back that she doesn't care. She'll make friends once they head to Tokyo, and she casually drops that she's already been on tons of expeditions. Watching it all, Kairu stays quiet, but she can't miss how insanely talented she seems. Sister leaned in close, and the staff member taunted her, claiming that if she could just escape the countryside, she'd finally get to live in Tokyo. The staff member snapped back, telling the girl it must be nice to stay ignorant, and that she had her own troubles to handle. Her frustration hit a breaking point. She thrust a finger forward and snapped that her brother's loss was big talk from her. Then she raged, demanding to know what that weird arrow power was, since she'd never even heard of it, and swore she'd crush her the next time they fought. She leaned in close and pushed the question hard. Why hadn't he ever looked into that weird skill, the one that could blend with others the right way? Jessica, Kaikeru's sister, along with Ko, just stared in silence as her words slammed into the air. Bizarre arrow have. After she finally let her frustration out, the staff members groaned in pure exasperation. Then with a sharp command she said, "If that's all, I'm gone," and told them to enjoy your stay. She strode off and Kikaru just watched her disappear, wrestling with every word in silence. Wild, right? Well. She wasn't the only one hanging on every word. Around the corner, a staff member peeked out, and right as he did, his eyes snapped toward her. Just a beat later, she popped back in, still sharp with her tone, but this time she pointed her way and told them to head out of the inn, catch a ride, then walk straight to the big bridge for a great view. Once they got there, she even recommended scoring some of those delicious manju from an old lady cell, and said they ought to go buy some. Watching her go again, his sister huffed in disbelief. So yeah, she really did end up telling him after all. Out in the distance, the staff member stayed hunched over, mortified beyond belief by what she'd just done. In the steamy hot springs of N's hot spring, Ko lets out a long, satisfied sigh, like all the heat just melts away his worries. Sure. She replays the whole day in her head, and even she can't hide it. She's genuinely shocked by how everything turned out. Her mind snaps back to Kaikeru's power, the tendril image flashing like a warning, and she admits it's wild, but she shrugs and says, this kind of weird new skill pops up all the time. Still, she knows one thing for sure. Both abilities and their jobs have a lot left to reveal. As the view zooms out, Kuryu and Jessica demand answers about why Kajuro got booted from the Holy Soar party, and Ko blurts out that it was because he wasn't powerful enough. But Jessica's face screams disbelief as she admits she doesn't buy it for a second. Hikaru's sister blurts out their dilemma. Part of her is desperate to know more, but the other part wants to respect his privacy. Jessica nods and says it's impossible to just ask him straight, especially since something else is probably going on too, something Ko keeps to himself as well. In a separate bath, Kikaru sinks alone in the water, his face tight with worry. Meanwhile, his sister, dry and restless, frets that if this keeps up, he'll start thinking of them as his real destiny. He stares into the water, grit setting like steel in his chest, and makes himself a silent vow. Someday he'll spill the whole truth to them. His mind slips back to that turning point, and he decides, this time he's going to tell them everything about what he saw the day he got his arrow symbol, because that eerie, tentacled woman's face is still seared into his memory. A spark of confidence ignites across his face. He's sure they'll believe him, it's only a question of timing. Later, back in their room, he keeps vigil over his sleeping sister. Then his focus snaps to the notice on the table, and it hits him hard. Phone chargers are only available at the reception. Fresh from his bath, he stepped into the quiet inn and scanned the dark, wondering who else was still up. Then Kyuko popped into his head, and a heavy sigh hit him as he realized she'd slipped out to a dungeon again. His suspicions were proven the second he saw Kyoko standing before an older woman, and that stern, biting look screamed that she was furious. Zuko insisted quietly but firmly that she hadn't set foot in a dungeon today. Then the woman snapped back, cutting her off, demanding she speak up, and grilling her about why any of it even mattered. As the explosive argument exploded in front of them, Kaikeru felt like nobody could cut in. Then the woman kept pushing, grilling Kyuko about her studies, and Kyuko fired back that it was all good as long as she graduated. Her face tightened as she dodged the topic, then leaned in and pressed Kyuko, still thinking about going to Tokyo. She cut that dream off immediately, flat out refusing to let Kyuko become an adventurer, swearing she'd never survive a life like that. Kyuko hit her breaking point, blew up, and screamed back, how dare her guardian call the shots for her future. She shoved the truth in his face. It was her life, and she deserved to do what she wanted. That same old conflict hit Kaikeru like a punch to the gut, dragging up a brutal flood of memories, because back then people didn't just doubt him, they flat out refused to let him be an adventurer too. He got why she wanted to be an all-in, full-time adventurer, but he also knew that road was brutal, looked down on, and almost nobody manages to survive it for more than 10 years. And then it hit him, she must have busted her ass while he had his party's holy sword, leaving her out there alone. The Guardian's rage crumbled into raw desperation. She grabbed Kyuko and begged, please stop throwing yourself into danger. Tell me what happens to our home if you don't come back. Her fight with Kyuko hits a boiling point. Kyuko snaps and yells that if the inn's inheritance matters so much, then her guardian should go find someone else to be her daughter. Those brutal words hit her guardian like a punch. He's stunned, frozen. Kiko snaps her gaze downward, cheeks burning with regret and fury, while Kaikeru jolts back in the hallway, listening in. Then she screams one last time, pure fury, and prays the whole place collapses into bankruptcy. Her guardian can only shout her name in stunned shock as Kyuko's face contorts with raw anguish. Her face wears defiance and heartbreak at once, tears swelling in her eyes and spilling down her cheeks. Overwhelmed, she whips around and sprints down the corridor, tearing past the Kaikeru that's still tucked away and unseen. He glares down the outdoor walkway as the crowd retreats, his face locked in a mystery while his mind races. Moments later, Kyuko slips onto a quiet balcony, leans her weight on the railing, and stares up at the sky packed with stars. Kaikeru's arrival smashes through her solitude, and when she whips around, her eyes still blazing red, she snaps, asking if he's come just to mock her. He calmly answers that he came to lift her spirits, surprised and blushing a little, and when Kyuko asks why he'd ever do that, he just shrugs and says it felt like he had to. She leans her head and arms on the railing, admits she's heard of him, points him out as one of the hired guard adventurers, then jokes that he's doing a great job for the weaker pipsqueaks even she could wipe out. She whips her gaze away from him when he asks why she wants to be a full-time adventurer, and with a sharp, defiant edge, she fires back that she's good at it. Like, is that really a terrible reason? With her voice low against the night breeze, she confesses that adventure is the one thing she's always been best at. Staring up at the sky packed with stars, she finally admits it. This has always been her dream, to land in a place where she can light up the world brighter than anyone else, and for her, that's the only real choice. Her face hardens into pure resolve, and she tells Kaikeru that even after seeing what Tokyo's top adventurers can do, she won't fall behind, she'll catch up, period. And then she swears it. One day, she'll even take down the one they call the Holy Sword. She fires back, daring him, "Don't you believe me?" And before he can even finish, she shrugs it off like it's nothing, like she's been alone forever. Kaikeru just nods, murmuring a quiet "aye." Her calm resignation snaps in half as she blurts out, full of fire, that she believes in herself, and if they never give her a shot, she swears with everything in her that she'll never, ever quit. A streak of light rips across the night sky, rocketing toward the nearby mountain at breakneck speed. It slams into the mountainside and bursts into a silent, blinding flash of energy, lighting up the dark landscape like daylight. The distant blast startles her and she whirls around, shouting, "What just happened?" Kaikeru, though, stays locked on their conversation, brushing off her worry and saying he doesn't think her mother is truly doubting her. Just as she tries to answer his shocking comment, another blast of blinding light, bigger, fiercer, and way more powerful, erupts from the exact same spot on the mountain. As the explosion's dust finally drifts down, Kaikeru and Kyuko freeze, eyes stretched wide at the wreckage. A wild wave of energy crashes over Kaikeru, and he knows it instantly, that unmistakable mana signature. Kyuko reacts on pure instinct, points straight at the energy source, and sprints off, while Kaikeru charges right behind her, neck and neck. They burst in and spot a dark, shaky anomaly snapping and crackling in the air beside an ancient gatehouse, and Hucko gasps because he recognizes it instantly, pinpointing the swirling energy vortex as a gate. He stares at the gate as it shimmers, and unease crawls up his spine. He snaps at Kyuko, saying something's off, then the gate suddenly appears out of nowhere, and he can't stop wondering if it was made the exact moment they looked. Before he can even think twice, the gate warps and churns, and out slips a ghostly, cartoon-faced creature with a long, lolling tongue crawling right through the portal. As soon as that one entity shows up, a whole swarm of freaky monsters pours in, boom, and Kyuko's still in school 1 second, then in full adventure gear the next. She yells a warning, jaw tight, eyes locked on the horror ahead. Monsters charging out of a stampede dungeon. Barely had dungeons hit the world when a fresh nightmare snapped awake. Out in the mountains of Tohoku, monsters burst into the villages, and terrified civilians scrambled to flee for their lives. Stampede dungeons, this wild, rare phenomenon, spit monsters straight into the real world, and they tore through Japan, a country totally unready for threats like that. Where the response dragged, families had no choice but to flee their homes, and pure devastation spread everywhere. Yet even now, the extermination campaign still can't make real progress against the chaos that won't die down. Out of nowhere, a glowing portal rips open in midair, and a swarm of weird, cartoonish monsters pours out. Kajura Kairu snaps, furious and panicked, yelling that trouble is here and the monsters are coming. As soon as the danger hits, the rank adventurer Kazuri Kyuko snaps her jaw with steel resolve, then rockets forward, just a blur, charging straight for the fresh creatures as they appear. Speed rockets as she barrels toward the target. From behind, the Reiza president's daughter spots it. Yep, a stampede dungeon. Kaikeru can't help but stare in awe at Kyuko's lightning pace while the masked girl shouts his name. He whips his eyes back to the swirling portal, jaw tight, and tells the others, "This is only the start, more monsters are charging in soon." Snapping into immediate command, the Reiza president's daughter starts firing off orders. She assigns Reiza Ajino to run the evacuation, orders Toganatsum to reach the association, and then calls in Tsukujas Tsukasa and Yuzui, readying them for the battles about to explode. When the call hits, Kaikeru steps up beside Tsukasa and that masked girl, gripping the ready weapon. Then Kaikeru roars that they're going to crush the monsters right where they're standing. After he throws his words from the front line, Kiko snaps her eyes back, stunned by the look on his face. Then she fires back questions, trying to understand why he picked that exact spot to stake their stand. She replayed her training in her mind, and unease crawled up her spine, because when you face a stampede dungeon, adventurers learn one rule drilled into them hard. You don't dodge around the danger, you square up and fight the monsters right at the gates. That's why those dungeons were infamous for being brutal to clear fast. Once monsters tore through the defensive line and spilled into the real world, the death toll would explode into something catastrophic. Her gaze snapped to the building ahead, and dread hit like a wave. Kairu's plan wasn't just setting up a fight, the inn itself would turn into the battlefield. Hikaru strode up, shouting, "Kazari." He could tell she hated every second of this, but he begged her for help anyway, swearing this was the only way to keep the casualties as low as possible. Before anyone could decide, the masked girl screamed that the monsters were on their way, and Kaikeru snapped into action, snagged his weapon, then lunged straight at the weird horde spilling out of the dungeon entrance. She snapped her gaze back at Kazari and said her crew looked unstoppable, like he had no place in the fight he'd planned, then watched him walk off as her face turned ice cold. When Hikaru halted, shock hit his face as it all clicked. She wasn't asking for help, she was going to clear the dungeon alone. He lunged forward, snatched her arm, and barked, "So you want to die trying that by yourself?" She yanked herself free with a violent jerk, flinging him backward until he stumbled, and when a jack-in-the-box monster popped up nearby, she didn't even glance at it. Her eyes stayed locked on the dungeon. She spun back toward him, sparks crackling over her body, and she snapped. Did he really want her to just stand there while the inn got smashed to pieces? Kaikeru froze, staring in shock at her sudden fury. She didn't waste a breath, she hurled herself straight into the dungeon gate's swirling darkness, and Kazari heard Kaikeru's desperate scream as the masked girl cried out, "Oniai-Achin." As Kazari disappears into the dungeon, the masked girl tells Kaikeru she's already reached the association, but backup won't show up for another 30 minutes. He grimaces hard at the delay, because out here in the countryside the wait drags on, and he can't just walk out on their post. He snaps at them to grow up, saying chasing Kazari won't magically guarantee anyone survives, and when he sees it, he goes even further. Cutting down their defensive line won't save them, it'll just slam his two remaining allies into even more danger. His frustration zeroes in on Tsukasa. She barrels toward him, shouting his name and then cuts straight to it. She insists they split up because she knows he's dying to chase the woman who took off after him alone. She swears he has to go, insisting she and Ajino can smash any monster that slips through, because the real worry gnawing at her is the other fighter, stuck in the dungeon alone. Ajino whips his gaze to Kaikeru, and before she can finish protesting, he points out just how dangerous things would be for her without it. Right before he can even finish, he takes 2 steps forward and faces Ajino head-on. Then she cuts him off and declares, loud and clear, that now it's Ajino's turn to trust her. Ajino hears her out, and the moment he sees her face, his expression melts. He nods and swears, yeah, he trusts her. She whips her gaze back to Kaikeru and declares, loud and fearless, that they're a vestige, one of those rare groups that take the toughest paths side by side. With his crew backing him, Kaikeru finally caves. He roars his agreement, then slams on a sharp warning for everyone to stay on their guard. His worry gets swept aside when Tsukasa grins and tells him to hand the defense to them. Then she sharpens her tone, warning Kaikeru that the dungeon ahead is high level and he'd better be just as careful. He yells his thanks over his shoulder to his crew, then dashes into the dungeon solo, forcing his companions to keep the line alone. Inside, it's this wild, whimsical world, giant toys everywhere and stars drifting through the air. He whips his eyes around, heart pounding, and then it hits him with dread. Where S. Kazari, she must have pushed even deeper. He rockets through the toy-filled world, spotting a crisp way ahead. Then a glowing arrow on the floor snaps his attention, warning of a brutal trap as the dungeon level hits hard. Now he's convinced the boss is terrifying, maybe a clockwork marionette Alice or even a murder chair. The second Alice whispers the idea of a marionette, a cold, grim picture snaps into his head, an eerie, looming figure with the power to crush him, and he knows facing something like that alone would be brutal. He shoves the grim thought aside and spots another trap symbol on the ground, then lunges forward, vaulting over a bulky block-like monster as his blade flashes and slices it down midair. Right when he hits the ground, a second enemy snaps in from the side, a warped toy monkey brandishing a sword and shield, and the brutal ambush blindsides him so hard he blurts out a curse. He whips away from the monkey, but right then another blow smashes into him. Then a gigantic ruler crashes down from above, sending him scrambling through midair just to survive. Snapping back into balance among the rampaging sea of giant toys, he realizes the real nightmare of this place. He can't tell the safe, set pieces from the monsters that are hunting them. That doubt turns every step into a minefield. He stumbles, panicking because he can't even trust the ground under him. Planting his own traps is suicide, so he clenches his teeth and admits it. The situation is way worse than he wanted to believe. Even with danger breathing down his neck, his resolve turns iron. Then boom, he spots Kazari ahead, streaking forward like lightning while she tears through her enemies. He knows she's even deeper inside, and there's no way he can waste another second getting to her. On the checkered floor, Kazuri Kyoko clenches her jaw so hard it looks like it might crack, her face frozen in pure strain and furious frustration. A towering figure looms over her and the tendril demoness reaches out. Her voice thunders as she offers Kazari the one thing she's supposedly been waiting for. Kazari's eyes flare wide, locked on the beast hanging over her. Elsewhere in the chaos of the toy room, Kaikeru just stops cold, like someone yanked the brakes out from under him. That same strange, familiar rush hits him again, and his head snaps up in panic as his mind scrambles, trying to wrap itself around how this is happening again. Right after that rush hits, a system message snaps into view in front of him, and then a physical card materializes in his hand, stamped with a glowing arrow symbol. The system flashes the truth midair, revealing exactly what this new power is. He glares at the horizon and the words slam through his head. He just got a brand new skill in the middle of that brutal fight. As he pushes through the deadly dungeon, he can't shake the feeling that everything is happening way too perfectly, like the timing's staged. And when the pattern starts repeating, he flat out refuses to call it luck, wondering if that mysterious girl is stepping in again. His thoughts get ripped away the moment he launches into the air, barely sliding past the swinging weapons of giant toy soldiers. From her spot above, the tendril demoness lets out a chilling laugh, sneering that he doesn't have the time to hesitate. Then one of the toy soldiers suddenly lands a solid blow, smashing Kikaru off balance. That hit locks everything in place, right there in midair. It clicks in his bones that he's reading this new power the same way he once read the arrow symbol, and he finally accepts it. If he doesn't use it, he'll never catch up. He roared his choice into the chaos and vowed he'd trust that mysterious woman. Even though her motives confused him, he felt in his bones that she needed him to rescue the girl too. From afar, Tendril Demoness fixed his gaze and slammed his skill to life. Right in front of him, a bright glowing sigil shaped like an arrow erupted in midair. He wasted no time, launching into the air and slamming the glowing trap symbol right on the empty ground beneath him. Watching it harden into a platform he could rocket off. That maneuver launched him over the swarm of toy soldiers, and one of them flailed its blade straight through the empty space he'd just left behind. Still flying, he shot his arm out and conjured a fresh symbol way ahead, setting up his next foothold in the sky. He landed cleanly on the brand new platform, staring in awe at the raw power he now controlled, thinking, this ability is straight up insane. He weighed the consequences and realized traps usually needed a solid spot to anchor them, but now he could fling them onto literally anything in midair, at any angle he wanted. He lunged forward again and it hit him like lightning. The whole space around him was his playground now, and this brand new power rewrote what a trapmaster could even do. His confidence got smashed in an instant. He tried to drop another trap on the monster below, but it flew wide and fizzled out, leaving nothing behind. He groaned through clenched effort, shocked that even with all that power, the ability was weirdly hard to control. The strain hit like a crushing wave, nausea surged, and he realized his brain couldn't handle it. Before, traps were placed only where his arm pointed, but now placement had endless possibilities, and the sheer flood of choices slammed him with a full-body backlash. He stood in a crazy world of toys and cartoon enemies, his new powers still frying his brain, but there was no time to breathe. He just had to learn it in the middle of the chaos. Teeth clenched as strain crushed him and sweat poured down his brow. He hurled a desperate plea across the battlefield, swearing he'd catch up to her, begging her to stay safe until he could reach her. As Kazuri Kyuko's words echoed, she planted her feet and gripped her rapier like a promise, while a tiny, ghost-like creature with glowing eyes floated in her direction, and she didn't blink, ready to meet whatever horror crawled next. During a frantic stampede across a bridge, an official tries to keep everyone in line, barking for calm. Then a wild-eyed man yanks him up and screams that his daughter vanished in the chaos. Dan's voice snaps with raw desperation as he yells, drowning in terror over what could happen to her. Hearing that plea, Kazari Kyuko's resolve turns to steel. Then she explodes forward at blinding speed, sure she can smash through the dungeon, stop the gate, and lock onto her target, the boss room. She storms up to a fantastical castle, its spires clawing at an endless sky of glowing, ethereal constellations. And yep, this is the final chamber. Before anyone can even think, she slips through the open doors. In the darkness, a weak wobble starts up, then snap, an abrupt click cuts the silence, and she snaps her eyes to the figure lurking in the gloom. It suddenly comes into view as a huge, creepy marionette, its metal body rattling with every clack, its long nose and droopy eyes looking completely dead, while a wind-up key turns slow in its back. It jerks one hand up and swings a tiny, plain puppet from its strings, Kyuko stares, her brain scrambling, because her enemy isn't a person at all, it's a doll. With a fierce, determined glare, she snaps out a curt apology, then raises her rapier like there's no tomorrow, because this strange foe won't wait. She lunges with the blade out, screaming that she can't waste a second watching it perform. The strike hits like lightning, straight and brutal. Her thrust gets yanked to a halt when two huge, cartoonish monsters, a panda and a teddy bear, plunge into the scene and slam an interceptor blade right in front of her. Her strike gets parried and a jolt shoots through her as she locks onto the truth. More monsters are lurking here, but the main figure, that isn't a monster at all. She brushes aside the lesser creatures and rockets through the air, snapping the gap to that weird doll-like thing. She rockets toward her target and the truth snaps into place. This giant doll is the puppet master, pulling the strings of the others from right off in the distance. With a furious roar, she charges straight through the crowd, swinging them aside to carve out a path. The blade snaps to a dead stop out of nowhere. Its momentum gets slammed to a halt by a force no one can see. A nearly invisible thread, pulled by the marionette, snatches her rapier mid-swing and yanks it to a sudden, painful stop. She switches tactics and rockets straight through the avalanche of stuffed animals, darting between them like she owns the chaos. She instantly figures it out. The stuffed animals are packed with hidden threads, and each one is a trap just waiting to snare her. Those threads are barely visible to the naked eye, and she knows she can't keep dodging them forever. She sees her opening. This puppet master can't move like he used to, and if she can just close the distance, it's over for him. Fresh grit lights in her eyes, and she rockets forward, leaping straight over that pit of crawling creatures hunting the master. Her aerial strike hit instant trouble. Right as she dived over the swarm, one of those goofy monsters shot up from below, going straight at her, and it put her whole attack route in jeopardy. She refused to be stopped, dug in her heels, and hardened her resolve, because she couldn't afford to fall here, not like this. She shoved through the first wave of danger, eyes locked on one target only. Then her rapier shot out and she dove straight toward the calm, harmless-looking marionette Alice. Right as her blade was about to land, a sharp click ripped through the air, and her face snapped from pure determination to shock, eyes going wide. The reason for her panic hit like a truck, her body locked in place midair, trapped by the same threads she'd been begging to escape, and down below the marionette just hung there still while Kyuko finally understood she couldn't even move a single finger. In yet another violation, her arm twitched on its own, yanked back with a brutal jerk, and a crushing wave of pure helplessness slammed into her as she finally realized she was being controlled. A brutal, unseen power cinched down on her, yanking her hand until it twisted, and the rapier, once her weapon, got flipped to betray her. Her arm got yanked into a sickening twist, and the tip of her own sword snapped straight to her throat. Cold steel crushed into her skin, power gone, breath stolen, while the marionette yanked her body like a puppet, and the danger surged closer with every heartbeat. Teeth clenched, eyes wide with panic, she fought tooth and nail against the puppet master's grip, while her own body betrayed her like the deadliest weapon. Her desperate fight got ripped out of her hands the moment a young man in a dark, tattered cloak burst in, sword blazing with flame, proving he'd arrived just in time. His sudden arrival snapped both fighters' focus in an instant. Marionette Alice's towering frame turned with a loud creak, and Kazuri Kyuko's eyes went wide as disbelief hit, a stunned cry bursting from her mouth. When the intruder crashed in, the marionette just jerked its own little puppet, and Kyuko got hurled through the air. Her rapier snapped forward toward the newcomer, while he clenched his sword tighter, the blade shaking as power surged inside. She slammed down right across from him, snapping into a dueling stance, and warned him, breathless, that the marionette was driving her every move, like a puppet on strings. He stayed ice calm and told her he already knew, because Marionette Alice had threads in hand, yanking adventurers around this place just like puppets. When he finally confirmed it, she snapped that he had to vanish fast, because this power was deadly in the worst way. The victim kept every ounce of their original strength and skill. He stared at her, unwavering, baffled. Why was she going head-to-head when she knew she couldn't beat him alone? She glanced aside, her resolve trembling for a second, and she finally confessed it was her who charged in recklessly, gambling that someone needed help. Her face twisted with pain as she asked, voice cracking, whether he truly had the right to worry about her. He exploded in a furious shout, yelling at him for daring to run off and leave her to die. Then she panicked and screamed back, "If you stay, you'll die too." He brushed off her plea, telling her not to quit yet, and swore he'd pull her out. Then he fired his skill, **** aerial extension ***, and a blazing path lit up under his feet, lifting him straight into the sky. He hurled himself onto a magic platform and blasted toward the controlled Kyuko, and the moment she snapped her head up in panic, she realized the traps weren't on the ground at all. They were hovering in midair, and one smacked her with a sharp, brutal hit. The impact slammed the wind out of her, and he saw her getting yanked along by the threads that trailed him, still dragged, but somehow not as fast as when she'd struck from above ground. Right there in that flicker of a start, he crashed headfirst into her forced assault, their blades snapping together and exploding in a shower of sparks. He snapped her relentless aerial barrage out of the air, realizing their footwork was dead even. Then he ground his shield to stop her hits, only to find he couldn't land a single strike, not even once. That's when he knew he had to yank the strings controlling her, and he had to do it right now. In the scramble, one of her hits slipped past his guard and snapped him with a brutal jolt, yet he still flashed a grim smile. He'd gotten his own strike in, and now he was ready to cut the threads once and for all. Her eyes blew wide with shock, then that hidden thread tied to her wrist jerked like lightning and snapped clean through. With the thread finally snapped, her left arm shot free, and realization hit like lightning. She had to hack through the rest with her own hands. Just as she lunged to cut the next thread, a tiny toy-like creature popped out of nowhere and slammed into her blade with a dull asterisk thud, stopping her cold. While up on the nearby rooftop, Marionette Alice watched the whole fight, silent as a puppeteer poised to pull the strings. He suddenly got boxed in by a swarm of ghostly toys. The crowd's skill made flesh, and rage hit him hard as he realized no matter how many puppet strings he hacked through, they snapped right back on. The puppeteer stared on, a calm grin on her face as Kyuko's movements got trapped all over again, while Kaikeru clenched his teeth, furious, realizing he'd been this close to freeing her and still blown it. Yuko stood frozen in place again, just a perfect puppet, while a whole army of toys ringed her by a whimsical castle, and up on the highest tower sat Marionette Alice, guarding the doll she'd reclaimed. He stared down the grim mess and realized his stamina was draining fast, and every second he stayed airborne cost him dearly. He knew he couldn't last, so he snapped into a new plan, and he needed it right now. Watching the chaos explode, Kazurika Yuko gets one crushing thought: this is all just mind-blowing. Parry blocks her strikes, Kairu studies every move with a sharp, critical eye, and just by watching he knows she's nailed the exact range and timing of every single trap, no guessing. And he realizes this isn't some lucky trick. She must have trained those skills tens of thousands of times to get this kind of control. But even with that insane skill, she looks completely swamped, fighting back as cartoon monsters swarm the whole area in overwhelming waves. Fritz clenched his teeth because he knew he couldn't last much longer. He had to figure out how to slash every string that was puppeteering her. With one decisive move, he rockets back and fires a massive arcing strike, an arrow-sliced cymbal slash that cuts the air open. The slash slices through the air, but it barely dents anything. Out of all those creatures, he barely lands a hit, and it makes it clear. Swinging at random gets him nowhere, so he snaps, "I'm going straight for the source." He forces himself to stay calm, certain his chance to close the gap is coming, and as his grip bites down on his weapon, he spots a slit of an opening and readies himself to strike. He rockets forward with an arrow symbol blast, screaming straight at one of the tiny floating monsters at insane speed. The real target isn't the room, it's that towering shadow stalking behind Kazari. He goads it, basically daring, "Think you can control me too." Since the monster's on the other end of the string, he snaps the connection and claims he can mess with the puppeteer straight away. The instant that disruption hits, Kazari staggers, then she feels it, her own moves slow to a crawl. Shadow dies out in a blink, Kazari snaps her gaze upward, and shock hits her like lightning. As Kaikeru tumbles through empty air, the real villain steps into view, a massive, elegant marionette. He can only choke out Kazari's name, Kazari. Kazari lets out a grunt as the puppets snap their attack around and slam into him in a violent burst. He gapes from afar, totally lost, wondering why the enemy would suddenly try to murder its own pawn. As that giant marionette towers over him, he grimaces and realizes he's totally blown his one chance. His mind rips back to the attack he launched on Kazari, meant to cut her off from the puppeteer once and for all. Now it clicks, this was all smoke and mirrors. The marionette never meant to kill her, because wiping her out would cost it a priceless weapon in its war against him. He clenches his teeth in fury, knowing he should have kept his cool. Then he snaps because his body moved on its own, and Kazari catches it with a worried look. Her eyes snap back to the real enemy, tears burning with rage as she screams at the towering brute, calling it a coward and daring it to fight its own battles. Hikaru stares at her explosion, jaw tightening as he reads the whole mess, and then he decides the enemy won't try that takeover stunt on him again. He braces himself with both swords flared wide, eyes locking in as he finally sees the trap. Now the enemy won't even play fair, they'll just swarm him with brutal numbers until he drops dead. Right on cue, a massive axe comes flying through the air. Then he instantly blasts Kazari out of the way and takes the hit full force, screaming in pain as it lands. After that first hit, a savage storm of tiny projectiles, spikes, hammers, and blades rips through him, leaving Kazari frozen, staring in stunned disbelief as shock and horror flash across her face while the assault buries him. He shuts Kazari's desperate plea down and tells her to run, until blades rip through him, and still his eyes stay locked as he calls her name and reminds her, just like he promised, not to give up. He pushes on, begging her to help him crush their foe, reminding her she's got a home that's still standing and still worth saving. He snaps at her to stay sharp, keep her eyes wide open, and don't miss the chance he's about to unleash. Even while they talk, his enemy keeps slamming attacks into the space around them, bursting into explosions. With a grimace that screamed agony, he pours power through his broken body, while Kazari can only freeze, stunned into silence as he lines up the move he's about to unleash. He roars, snaps into action, and unleashes a skill, an arrow symbol, clamping down on Kazari tight as he hurls them both forward in a blinding, straight-line burst of speed. As they rocket through the air, her stomach drops when she realizes he's chained the movement technique to both of them at the same time. Their momentum hurls them straight at a building. Kazari yelps as they crash through the window, glass exploding everywhere and the frame splintering under the impact. The arrow and slash symbol blasts them forward, tearing straight through the structure and carving a wake of pure destruction behind them. Bursting out the other side, they're suddenly headed straight for a towering brick smokestack. On a distant rooftop, Marionette Alice stares as Kazari's face twists with dawning terror. There's no dodging this hit. In that last heartbeat, he whips his body around, bracing for the full impact. Then the tower erupts in flames as he throws himself between her and the blast, shielding her completely. He stares down at her, battered and worn out, then forces a tiny, sad smile and asks, "So, did I end up looking lame after all?" Tears surge in Kazari's eyes as she glares at the dust and wreckage, her face smeared and set in stone. She won't let it be real, blurting one sharp word, "Nonsense." Her denial gets obliterated by one brutal truth. Kaikeru is still standing in the wreckage beside her, alive and unbroken. His jacket hangs in tatters, turning to choking black dust, but his sword stays raised and ready. Across the shattered plaza, Marionette Alice watches with cold focus, and her swarm of tiny puppets scurries out in a battle-ready spread. His defiant stance lasts about half a second, then he groans as his body betrays him and he lurches forward right before he can faceplant. Kazari snaps into action, catches him mid-fall, and screams in alarm. He staggers, gripping himself as he tells her not to worry, insisting it's just him overdoing it, and that the real battle hasn't even started yet. Kazari watches, unimpressed, because she can feel it. This isn't just pain, something far darker is wrong. He leans into her for support, jaw tight with strain, and starts mapping out their one path to victory, then drops the exact trick for bringing Marionette Alice down. He lays out the brutal truth about her power. Those invisible strings don't miss forever, and dodging them all is a fantasy, because one of them will hook eventually. So their plan has to be a two-way rescue pact. When she snags one of them, the other instantly slices the controlling string before control can lock in. With the plan locked in, he drops a gut-punch confession. He can't fight at full strength, and he begs her to step up and take the lead on the front line. He locks eyes with her, demanding straight up if she can do it, and she answers instantly, fierce as steel, blazing with fresh purpose as she snaps back, "Who do you think you're talking to?" Her confidence fires them both up, then she snaps her head back toward their enemy, eyes locked in pure grit, and yells, "Come on, let's smash that doll." Right behind her, Kaikeru can't help but harden his resolve, fueled by her strength. With their strategy locked in, they rocketed into a counterattack, sprinting across the wrecked, rubble-strewn ground. The swarm of smaller puppets surges straight at them. Two warriors plant their feet and brace for impact, blades primed to carve a bloody path through the crowd. She bolted forward with Kaikeru, their steps snapping into perfect sync as they tore across the distance, and the second they closed in, startled realization flashed across Kaikeru's face. He stared in disbelief at her skill, because even the lead has to juggle the whole battlefield in their head, and somehow she was syncing perfectly with his speed without even glancing his way, and it hit him fast. He'd be lucky to have her on his side. To seal her argument, her rapier ignited with tightly packed energy, and the instant she surged forward, she seized the moment for one game-changing strike. The attack landed perfectly, ripping into Marionette Alice's arm with a thunderous blast, her puppet limb shattered into splinters on impact. The moment the fight kicks off, Marionette Alice suddenly morphs, new arms bursting into existence, and Kajura Kairu blurts out a panicked warning, staring at what just formed. Kazuri Kayuko grabs his attention and warns him to stay sharp, because she's never seen anything like this before, and she fears they might have waited too long enough for some kind of timer to finally go off. The creature now raises a whole swarm of razor-long rods, gripped by fresh, spindly limbs, hanging there like a warning before it strikes. He instantly unleashes a blinding blitz of strikes, snapping both Kyuko and Kairu into a desperate leap back to barely dodge the hit. Her face lights up with pure exhilaration. Fantastic. She blurts, eyes locked on her foe, loving every second of finally fighting it head-on, while Kaikeru watches from the sidelines, stunned by how fast she moves. Kyuko and the marionette collide, and the scene erupts into a wild blur of motion, so fast he can barely track it, rage and frustration boiling as he realizes he can't jump in time. He grits his teeth and decides to find another way to help. Through the pounding attacks, she locks in and reads the battlefield, because the marionette's extended weapons can hit from way farther than she can. So she makes her choice. She has to slam into range and go straight for its main body. He locks in her plan. Kaikeru slides her perfect opening into place. Then he starts chanting, aerial extension, flame, and glowing magical sigils burst into the sky. Right then, he snaps a warning to the marionette. Don't rush, because one wrong move and his traps will spring. And from one of those sigils, a creature made of pure flame rockets forward. The threat hits and the marionette snaps into action. Kyuko watches closely as it retracts its weapons, yanking them tight to its body to shield itself. As the creature's guard slips, she spots the crack in its defense. Then her resolve ignites and she rockets forward, vanishing the gap in the blink of an eye. She slams her foot down with a thunderous stomp onto the marionette's head, crushing it straight toward the ground, and from the sidelines Kaikeru erupts, roaring, "Take it down." She watched her resolve turn razor hard, and then, boom, Kyuko let out a violent scream of defiance, swearing she'd never, ever be beaten in a sword fight. The blade hit dead on, tearing the marionette apart into a storm of shattered pieces. Then she screamed one last time and declared the fight finally over. But as the pieces crashed down, the marionette's head, somehow still whole, yanked its mouth open wide, and Kaikeru's eyes snapped to the new nightmare from where he stood, poison needles. Before Kyuko even got a warning out, a long, razor-sharp needle shot from the puppet's mouth and drove straight into her shoulder. The marionette laughed in icy, spiteful tones, taunting her that it was too bad, and it would never let her catch it off guard again. The impact slammed her through the air, and Kaikeru's voice cracked with panic as he watched her crash down. As she dropped toward the ground, a burst of razor-sharp dark projectiles blasted up from below, screaming toward her like a deadly storm. But the shots weren't meant for her. Projectiles tore past, spearing Marionette Alice's charging head, then thudding safely down, and Kyuko pumped her fist as she shouted, "We did it." Kaikeru fired her arrow at the exact perfect moment, right on cue, so she could celebrate their shared victory together. Catching her breath, she snapped her gaze to him, cheeks burning, and said his last arrow hit with timing so perfect it felt downright creepy. Then he grinned back, teasing that she could have delivered the compliment a little nicer. Just when they thought they'd gotten a breath, the sky detonated in brilliant light. Boom. An enormous shimmering portal tore into existence, and Kyuko recognized it on sight. She stares into the shimmering portal and realizes the finish line is on the other side. Kaikeru notes that the main monster spawning should have stopped, but a few stragglers could still be wreaking havoc, so he grabs her urgency and tells her to sprint through now. Right before they cross, a wave of panic slams into her, eyes squeezed shut. She whispers a desperate, silent plea into the air, begging that everyone makes it out safe. Without a second thought, the two of them exploded through the gate, slamming the dungeon's suffocating darkness behind them. She steps onto the same old stone path toward the inn, and those familiar, traditional buildings feel like a warm promise under the dark night sky. Her eyes flick over to Kaikeru, standing just a few steps away, and he quietly nods like he's in on it. Then the little masked girl barrels up to his side, laughing with pure joy, shouting that she just knew her only Achin would make it. Right nearby, Yuzui and Tsukasa just wait, and then their faces light up with pure relief. Even with their clothes shredded from the fight, they're both safe, grinning like they made it through the storm. Usually he greets her with a warm welcome back, his voice trembling with emotion. Then Tsukasa flashes a smug, triumphant grin and brags that they wiped out every monster on their side. Kaikeru watches her victorious team, stunned. Staring into the calm forest beneath the stars, he quietly declares his return with a heartfelt, no-questions-asked affirmation. Out by the inn's grounds, the armored night watches keep standing guard, and Natsum hurries off, practically bursting with relief that everything turned out okay. Natsum takes a hard look back at the choice that nearly broke her, torn between guarding her lady and the urge to slip in after the others with her stealth. And when the whole crisis finally blows over with no more chaos, she can't even believe it. Just two adventurers really cleared an entire stampede dungeon all by themselves. As Kyuko strides away from the group, her face turns cold and distant, while behind her, Kaikeru grimaces in pain and the others crowd around him, promising that the healer will be here any moment. Her quiet steps get ripped apart by a sharp shout of her name. She whirls around and finds an older woman in a kimono, while her guardian charges in with a furious glare. Rage tightens across the woman's face as Kyoko stops on the bridge, and she finally snaps out a quiet acknowledgement of Kyoko's presence. Out of nowhere, the guardian yanks Kyoko's arm, then Kyoko snaps, "You idiot." Rage shakes her voice as she demands, "Why would you do something that dangerous?" Her tirade keeps roaring as she orders Kyuko to back off this kind of work, swear it off for good, and hand it to the experts, while Kyuko just freezes, staring back, completely stunned into a silence she can't break. Hikaru steps in and soothes the guardian, urging her to cool off, then locks eyes with her and tells her flat out she needs to love her daughter a little more. The guardian's hard stare snaps to Kaikeru, and in that split second Kyuko swivels around and keeps trudging across the bridge, shoulders sagging like she's already lost, while Kaikeru starts talking again, eyes locked on the guardian. He blurts out that he's only worried about Kyuko, and then he swears he doesn't care what happens to the house, as long as she's safe. His words hit Kyuko like a bolt of lightning, freezing her mid-step, while shock and disbelief surged across her face at his heartfelt confession. A gut-punch realization hits her: no matter how she tries, becoming an adventurer will end up hurting her guardian. And still, that secret longing won't leave her alone. Her resolve hardened like steel, her thoughts screaming one promise: never give up. She stared her guardian down, jaw set, voice rock steady even with blood and bruises still on her skin. Then she declared, clear as thunder, once graduation hits, she's heading straight to Tokyo. She admitted this choice would shake people up, but she wasn't chasing anyone's approval. She'd already locked in her path, because all she wanted was to become an adventurer. Then her voice flared with pure fire, swearing she'd go back home one day, after she'd obliterated every dungeon in the world. Climbing to the top and becoming the world's strongest adventurer, she vowed that nobody would ever get hurt again, and that her mom would finally stop worrying. All she asked was that when she returned, her mother would meet her with a bright, happy smile. Her guardian just stood there, stone silent, watching the young woman's grit. As she stared at her daughter, one quiet thought hit her, and she couldn't help wondering when Kyuko had started towering over her. She tore through the tense silence with one calm request. Kiko had to fetch some manju to make her grandmother smile. Then after a quick pause, she whispered, "And me too." She turned her head and admitted, with a touch of sadness, that she wouldn't even feel like eating them unless Kyuko was there. Kyoko's heart got hit like a truck when her guardian's words exposed a crack in him. Tears surged into her eyes and heat rushed up her cheeks. With a calm, trembling heart, she just nodded, no words needed. Under the night sky, the two stood on the bridge, sharing a silence that said everything. Later on, Kyuko finally drifted off to sleep, fully at peace. The next morning, in casual clothes, she strolled the path and spotted Kaikeru at a public water tap. He'd been scrubbing his face, looked up, and when their eyes locked, a soft, surprised "oh" slipped from him. He clocked her standing there and asked if she was up early for training, and Kyuko, face turned away, wrestled with her own thoughts, knowing she had to thank him for yesterday, but her words clammed up, leaving her flustered with nothing but a shaky, half-garbled, "yeah, something like that." What? Panic pounded straight through her chest, heat flooding her face as she tried to make sense of why it was happening, and she finally blurted out a single, breathless sound of pure, total confusion. Kairu paces the paved path beside Kazari and asks if she's really glad she managed to talk everything out with her mother. Then her cheeks flare red, she gets all flustered, and she stammers, begging him to wait and not let. Her mind spirals as she scrambles to explain what she's feeling. She insists it's nothing, just the suspension bridge buzz from their last fight, because if it's anything more, then she'd have to admit she's ridiculously easy to get under someone's skin. Kazari wrestles with her own thoughts, and Kiker clocks the perfect moment because there's something he's dying to talk about. Panic hits her like a truck, and she blurts for him to stop, to not come near her right now. Then, without missing a beat, she asks why he won't just go with her instead. He halts in his tracks, snaps his gaze onto her with a grim face, then fires off one straight demand: "I want you, Kazari." The words hit her like a punch, wham, and she goes completely silent, eyes bulging with pure shock, mouth hanging open as all she can spit out is a confused "ha." He sputters again, totally stunned by that sudden remark, while they stand on the path under the trees. She finally finds her voice and snaps, saying it's all too sudden and that they've only just met, while Kaikeru stays calm, shrugs off the time excuse, and starts laying out why. His gaze locks on hers, and his voice turns dead serious as he lays out his verdict. She's got the true gift to be an adventurer, and he says it straight to her face. He keeps talking, laying down cold, sharp logic, saying he and the others were perfectly in sync in battle, and now his party needs more vanguards. He can step into that role, sure, but he admits a trapmaster is basically a rearguard, and then he hesitates, voice shaky. If it's possible, he'd like to. But as Kazari lays out his practical explanation, her calm snaps, rage twists her face, her cheeks blazing red. Kaikeru freezes, stunned, and blurts an apology, asking if he somehow messed up. Still stunned by his sudden offer, she demanded he spell out exactly what he wanted from her. Then he froze for a beat and repeated the same request: join his party. Unseen by the two, their acquaintances lurk at a distance, muttering that Yukiko's got Kazari pegged for a refusal and that Kaikeru's way too impulsive. But Kokiri remembers how sure he was that he could talk her around. They push on down the path and suddenly Kaikeru freezes, because Kazari has stopped walking behind it. He whirls toward her completely baffled, and she plants her feet and demands, straight to his face, whether he's actually serious about what he just said. He locks eyes with her and makes it crystal clear. He really did mean it when he said they were in sync during the fight. Her hand tightens into a clenched fist at her side, and with a fierce, low calm she orders him to do it, while he just freezes, staring, completely thrown off by her sudden change. She whirled around to meet his eyes, then screamed her choice like it was carved in stone. "I'll do it." She snaps to attention and blurts out the real reason right away, her face set with steel, cheeks just lightly pink, because it's not his question that made her decide to join, she insists. She's felt the exact same thing all along. His eyes blow wide in surprise, then joy erupts and he blurts out that he's in, realizing this is exactly the proof he's been chasing. Side by side, they can reach even bigger heights. She's not done, she jabs a finger at him and demands he listen close, swearing her dream and her feelings are 100% right. He nods and the thought hits him hard. If he of all people doesn't believe her, then whoever will. He nods and agrees to her terms, sure, even if it comes out a little confused. Then her cheeks burn red as she locks eyes with him and warns him, fierce and final, to get ready for what's coming. Her warning still hangs there while she looks away, a hot blush blooming across her face, and from afar her companions watch the moment, because she's officially said yes to the partnership. As they walk off together, Kazari grips his arm like her life depends on it, and the whole time, he can't shake the gut feeling that this arrangement has a hidden twist waiting to explode. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, Hagenko gets a tight briefing, then they head straight for the rooftop helipad, where a helicopter is already waiting. She stands locked and ready, fingers gripping the hilt of her blade, and snaps back to the pilot. "I'm set." Then the Ganko of the Holy Sword starts to deploy. The moment they're up in the air, the pilot says it's been ages since they last flew together, and asks if she's got business up north all the time. She shakes her head, thinking that the biggest moments usually kick off only after someone leaves the capital. He lets out a quiet chuckle, amazed at how much she's grown from the fierce girl he once knew, and with that small, knowing smile, she just nods like it's all true. Then her gaze snaps to the raging sea below, right where she spots their target, an underwater stampede dungeon, one of the rarest kinds out there, and only the second to ever show up in Japan's history. The moment the first monsters claw their way up, she sizes up the danger, and thank the stars, they're not real swimmers, but even so, their presence spells disaster for any ship nearby, so she decides to wipe them out before she even drops into the dungeon. She tells the pilot she's cleared to use her skills beyond the battle zone, then orders him to open the door. She rockets out into open air above the water, ready to unleash her secret sword technique as white light floods the scene. She snaps out her secret white lightning sword technique, one thunderous swing, and a massive crescent wave of pure energy explodes from her blade, ripping across the sky and crashing down into the raging sea. The energy wave slams into the ocean and tears through the surface like a blazing blade, carving a razor-straight line and vaporizing everything in its path. On the helicopter, the pilot's jaw drops in disbelief, so he snaps, asking how she's going to get back up, and she just tells him to keep his eyes on her as she floats down below, then pick her up when he spots her. The pilot can only gawk because she feels like something not even human. Under a crescent moon in a creepy, pitch-dark forest, Kairu's crew is trapped in a no-way-out fight, until a hulking animas monster drops over them like a nightmare, and Tsukasa and Kazari slam in with a perfectly timed attack. Kairu roars that he'll hold the right side, then fires off orders for Kazari and Tsukasa to hit their spots exactly. With a snap of resolve, Tsukasa hurls herself through the air, daggers gleaming, then slams down hard and roars that her part is done. She snaps toward Kaikeru with a burst of excitement, breathlessly whispering that she won, then firing off, "Did you see my appeal?" Kazari, who's standing right there, just stares back, stunned and annoyed all at once. Watching from a safe distance, everyone else in the party clocks Tsukasa's sudden cheerfulness. Yukiko says it's gotten way easier to fight since they recruited a fifth member, and Kokiri jokes that Tsukasa's just thrilled to finally have a rival, since they're basically the same kind of fighter. With the fight finally over, the crew crowds together and Kazari fires off one question. Did they really keep every gate in the area standing? Kairu nods, every single one held. Then Kazari realizes what that means. Travel restrictions are about to be lifted, and suddenly this whole mission feels worth it. Kairu grins and promises he'll drag every badly battered piece of gear to the Riai's blacksmith for repairs. But before the others can react, Sakasa cuts in. Her equipment is perfectly fine, and she's handling her own fixes. He whips his focus to Kazari, and she stares back with this tangled look, then blurts out that he's basically an adventure machine. Because she's never met anyone who trains and preps harder than she does, and it honestly feels unfair that he's also a former member of the Holy Sword. She can only guess this is exactly how the top adventurers roll. Her thoughts harden into pure steel resolve. She straight up says the suits are perfect, then vows to charge straight at the origin gate, no matter what else they throw at her, because she's ready for anything. As she and the others rolled along, Kairu lit up with a satisfied grin and said, "We finally nailed it. This is gonna be a proper party." His voice snapped into full seriousness, and he blurted to everyone that while they were still moving, he needed to tell them how he learned his arrow symbol skill. Tsukasa's eyes lit up. He leaned in and demanded to know what it was. As he kicked off his story, that encounter crashed into his mind like thunder, the ethereal tendril demoness and that blazing, arrow-like energy that pierced him to the core. Kazari, Itomi, and Tsukasa hung on every word, staring him down like nothing else mattered. After they heard the rumors about the mysterious girl, Kazari was the first to snap in and demand the truth. Was she even human? Kairu confessed his doubts too, insisting she had to be tied to the dungeon somehow. He kept going, insisting that the one thing he was certain of was this: she gave him that skill for a reason. When that hit, the girls buzzed with shock, and I was told she'd never heard of a monster that could talk before. He wrapped up his story with a sickening truth. Somehow, he was now tied to that terrifying power he'd only seen in his memories. That info hit Kazari paws like a thunderbolt. She knew this couldn't be just mediation or some ordinary news. Countless people had chased the roots of skills and jobs, yet no one could answer the real mystery. Why adventurers get them in the first place? Kaikeru finally admitted he had no clue, but the instant he said it, chills crawled up his spine, like something was watching him. She kept racing through her thoughts. If creatures from the dungeons can hand out skills however they want, then it only makes sense that the quest adventurers chase must spring from the same place. Her words sank in and unease spread through me. What if they could grant skills, then they could just as easily snatch them away? Kazari, though, caught the opening and blurted that maybe she could grab a truly unique skill of her own. Right as they were spiraling into theories, Kairu snapped out and warned them how reckless their thinking was. Then the air suddenly changed, and everyone jolted upward, sensing a threat closing in. He figured the chaos would explode if his story leaked, but staying silent felt even more dangerous. He pitched the plan to the crew and insisted they'd have to dig into the association's top brass, only the ones who truly believed him. Then, right before they could go after the origin gate, Kokiri cut in and demanded they lock down what mattered most first. Kazari snapped the assignment up on the spot, saying she'd tap her family's connections to dig into this. Then she frowned hard at what crawled up from that dungeon, staring at the big round mark on her own arm, like it didn't belong there, and Kaikeru couldn't help but wonder if they really could be trusted. Tsukasa blurted out that she finally got it, then snapped straight to Kaikeru, demanding why he hadn't told the Holy Sword, because in her eyes, the other girls just couldn't handle politics. Her cutting remark lit a fuse in Kokiri. She demanded to know why Tsukasa trusted a brand new girl like her, and even said she'd sooner believe someone connected to the Rays as family. Tsukasa snapped back that the danger wasn't on him at all, it was on Kairu, because she might take the info he gave and run with it. He stepped in to shut down the argument, laying out his logic with zero hesitation, because he couldn't accept dragging Kokiri all the way to Tokyo without telling her the real truth. She finally admitted he was right, because if anything went wrong in that dungeon while she sat in the dark, she'd be haunted for the rest of his life. Kaikeru nodded hard, saying they were up against something unknown and they had to throw everything at it. Then Kokiri swallowed her pride and apologized, confessing the selfish truth. She didn't just want to fight, she wanted all four of them to take on their enemy together. The pressure finally let up and Kazari climbed onto the balcony rail, grinning as she told them all, "Don't worry, I'm going first," while the others stared. She snapped her look into place with fierce resolve and breathed out that she finally had the key to his ridiculous power, thank goodness. To her, the road ahead was crystal clear. Knock out their enemies, and then they'd become the greatest in the whole world. Her fearless declaration snapped the air, and right after it, Kokiri's calm resolve took over. She faced Kaikeru and told him straight, if he was tied to the Origin Gate's mystery, then he could be her only shot at a miracle cure inside. She wasn't acting like danger scared her, she saw it as a doorway to what she needed. She gives Kaikeru's cheek a playful pinch, and the smack of her grip basically rings in the air as she and Kazari tear into him for dragging his feet and not telling them sooner. Kaikeru blurts out apologies, but Tsukasa jumps in fast, saying his problems are the party's problems. Tsukasa presses on with pure fire, declaring that no matter if it's the baffling origins of adventurers or any other nightmare that blocks their path, they'll crush it together. Her words cut through the silence and the four of them lock arms, now a brand new party, standing shoulder to shoulder with one terrifying purpose. Their faces blaze with the same steel resolve, and with one loud, unified voice, they lock in and commit to the plan. Then Heikaru lays it all out. Two conditions stand between them and the Origin Gate expedition, and they'd better hit both. First, he needs to climb to a rank adventurer, and he's already gunning for it. Then he drops the second, deadlier demand: get through a high-ranked dungeon. From the front of a tiny boat, Tsukige Tsukasa leans over, eyes blazing as she points at a jagged rocky coastline. Is that where we're going? Kajura Kaikeru nods right beside her. Not sure. 5 adventurers stand frozen before a swirling dark anomaly, and yeah, it's a real A-rank dungeon. And Clinical Lawn shouts that it sat out in the remote wilds long enough for nobody to notice when it spawned, and Ray's only just got the rights to clear it. It keeps pushing Kaikeru, saying their party's vestige won't climb to the next rank unless every member beats a top-tier dungeon. Kaikeru nods and grins, certain that with all 5 of them together, and how much stronger they've become since the Stampede dungeon, they'll be fine. Purpose locked in, the party whips around and charges straight into the dungeon's ominous, crackling portal. On the other side, the fight is already raging. Anders Grinkunder von Wilder realizes her opponent is tougher than expected, and that it's locked onto her completely now. She glares at the creature, daring it to keep its eyes on her. A massive avian monster hurtles forward, and the armored founder scores as Blonde springs into action. She snaps her large shield up to block the hit and fires a front cuff of her own. Wilder thanks her for the save, and Kaikeru says it straight: even if these monsters are high level, they can still beat them, right here on equal ground. Right after that clash, Kaikeru asks if anyone needs healing magic, but the team shuts him down fast. Hold it for the boss. Tsukasa from Tsukyuj even admits it's brutal without a real healer, yet Itomi Kyukuri shrugs and fires back that their party's packed with muscle and brains, plus plenty of punch. Kaikeru stews on it, realizing Vestige's problem is simple. It can't hang in a long fight, so he's determined to find the boss and end this quickly. The party pushes deeper and steps into a surreal, bone-chilling chamber. Right in the middle, a massive twisted tree sprouts up, surrounded by floating office junk like desks, chairs, calculators, and monitors hanging in midair over nothingness, all beneath a looming black orb floating in the sky. Staring at that wild, twisted landscape, Kaikeru shouts at his crew that drifting around with no direction is killing their morale. Tsukige Tsukasa whips around and suggests, let me use my stealth skill. I'll scale up to a higher spot and scope out the area for everyone. Steals her resolve, she refuses to let fear call the shots. Kajura Kaikeru frets that going solo might be suicide, but she snaps back that moving alone is exactly what an assassin lives for. Once the decision was set, she beams and tells everyone to pitch the anti-monster tent, then kicks back, pointing to a nearby tree as the spot she'll come back to, and Kaikeru nods, handing her the recon mission without hesitation. She disappears into that eerie landscape, and the others stare like a leader has to carry that much weight every day. Kaikeru turns away from the group, lets out a deep sigh, and trudges off under the crushing burden of his own thoughts. He finally faced the weight of it, like it hit him the moment they formed Vestige, and now every choice he makes could cost his members their lives. He stands apart from the brand new tent, and the tendril demon's voice slithers into his thoughts, calling him Ko, while she challenges him about the crushing weight of being the leader of Japan's top party. Suddenly everything snaps into motion. This young girl in a uniform pops out from behind a doorway and lights up as she welcomes Tsukige's back, then steps outside with an umbrella, and boom, Kaikeru's standing right there as she shouts, Oniachin. What? That name still doesn't come from the girl's mouth. It blasts out in a horrid screech from the open maw of a monstrous, bat-like creature. The creature rockets forward with a savage shriek, and the party gets blindsided, yelling in pure panic and rage at the brutal ambush. Right after it all goes down, the uniformed girl whips around to Kaikeru and demands, did that voice belong to Tsukige's? Behind them, the rest of the party braces, ready to throw down. She blurts that Tsukige's must be calling, maybe he's in trouble right now. Then Kaikeru snaps at her to breathe, saying monsters with mimicry can hear like monsters should, and this sounds less like a real cry for help and more like the creature is copying a voice it picked up earlier. He and his party dug in at the spot Tsukige's marked, right beside that massive tree, because the armored knight menacingly warned that leaving would be a disaster, and Oni-Achin's eerie mimic cry kept rattling through the dark all around them. Screams swarm the armored knight as he calls this whole mess a nightmare, while down below, the party gets slammed by a crawling horde of smaller bat-like fiends, and the uniformed girl admits the truth. She's scared and rationing every ounce of strength, with Kite quietly counting how outnumbered they are. He and Kokiri both feel it, something is seriously wrong. Kokiri points out that if Tsukige's were unharmed, he'd have already clocked how huge this commotion is. A uniformed girl steps forward, ready to use her stealth to search, but Kaikeru snaps it down fast. Splitting up would be even more dangerous. A storm of tension tightens his face as he mouths Tsukage in silence, refusing to crack, because if he panics now, his brave first move will be pointless, no matter how terrified they already are. Even with his resolve, doubt creeps in the second he starts wondering if waiting was the right move. Right then, he looks up and sees the main mimic monster raining down small, dark spheres from above. As those spheres drop lower, Kokiri suddenly clocks something huge. Right after a monster wrecked it, that torn big leaf is back, somehow wholly again. Realization hits him like lightning. He spins around and yells the uniformed girl's name. Usually he'd snap back that Tsukage is probably fine, but right now he can't find him, and that makes no sense. She instantly gets what he means, grabs control, and tells him to loose a light-based arrow, straight up, symbol and all. He releases the glowing arrow, and she snaps into action, swinging a dark chain sphere like a wrecking ball. Then the arrow rockets straight for the massive illusory clock face blazing in the sky. The arrow dies mid-flight, leaving just a ghostly ripple in the air, and Kiker jolts, because it hits him at last. He knew all along. This whole spectacle is a slick, breathing lie. Watch Tsukage plunge through the swarm of phantom bats, her spear-like weapon slicing a clean path through the dizzying blur. Right after she touched down, she beamed and declared, "I'm back." Kaikeru let out a huge breath of relief and shouted her name, and everyone else crowded in with happy, "Thank goodness you're safe" comments, scolding her for scaring them. Kokiri just looked at him and called out, "Oni-Achin." Hakuri shot Kairu a totally deadpan look and said Tsukage's real voice was way cuter than his stupid imitation. Then Kairu recoiled, flustered and embarrassed. Meanwhile, Tsukage laid out her recon from above. Everything looked totally flipped, and she couldn't figure out where to land until she used Yuzui's landmark to steer herself back to. Kaikeru heard that and felt pure pride for cracking the illusion, and Kokiri thanked him for spotting it. Then he admitted the real test was coming, and he steeled himself to stay sharp and be ready. Tsukage barged into his thoughts, shouting that she'd found the boss room and traced a clear route so they wouldn't get lost, and Kaikeru's face lit up until Tsukage warned, "But the room looks kinda weird." He demanded what she meant by strange, and right then the scene cracked open. An entrance showed itself. A tiny door etched with intricate patterns, sitting in the giant palm of a colossal hand made of leaves and vines. When he stared at the door patterns up close, his breath caught and his eyes blew wide. He knew those markings instantly, and he shouted that this was an epitaph dungeon. Akuri, clueless about the word, blurted out whether an epitaph was the boss monster. He nodded, grim as stone, and admitted he'd only seen one before back then. The armored knight demanded more details, and she usually jumped in to explain. She said an epitaph is nothing but a weak shadow without a body, yet it still carries abilities that cause nothing but trouble. Heikaru's face tightens as he unveils the epitaph's main power, its ability to spawn exact copies of them. He says it's basically a memory book from a fearless comrade, and then it blasts those recollections out as 20 separate duplicates. He keeps going, saying it takes forever for the copies to truly catch up to the original's full power. Sakasa realizes they're doomed if they have to take on 20 opponents, and the uniformed girl just can't believe it. He lays it out, this psychological trap is pure mind games. Adventurers freeze when it comes to striking copies of their own companions, and the clones use that hesitation like a weapon, so the only way out is to blast those projections down fast. The armored knight growls that this mess is nothing but trouble, then demands, "So what do we do?" Kaikeru, his steady, his gay, slips in with a theory. He tells the whole group, the second we step in, ignore everything, fight only the copies. He says it keeps things clean because every target they swing at is 100% a fake, so no one gets hit by a real teammate. With the plan locked in, he tells them the memory scan will kick in the second they step inside, so it's all out speed. He shouts the order and the whole party rockets into that massive chamber, staring at eerie, blank statues lining the walls Just as they brace themselves, the statues flare with light and start to reshape, until the armored knight and the uniformed girl stare in shock as those figures become flawless copies of them, and the knight finally understands. This is what an epitaph can do. Her flawless copy materializes right in front of her, and with a furious cry, the uniformed girl launches forward, screaming that battling her own double feels absolutely awful. Chaos explodes across the chamber as every fighter clashes with their own doppelganger, and Kaikeru watches their formation hold strong so no one has to hesitate, everyone can strike. Take them out before they steal any power. He shouts, then Sakasa, eyes locked in, starts counting and declares, "Only 19 are left." He lunged in hard and his blade slammed into an identical one, katana for katana. With a grimace, he realized it instantly. This was a perfect copy of his own weapon. Two katanas collided with a savage clang asterisk, grinding into a deadly stalemate. His eyes bulged as he stared down the duplicate sitting out there, and his companions froze in pure disbelief, because that copy didn't just stop him, it already had his strength copied so hard it felt impossible. Right in the middle of the battle's chaos, another flash of steel tore the scene apart. Everyone in the party gasped as they realized the newcomer wasn't one of the epitaph copies, and they demanded, "Who are you?" Kike was new to this, eyes locked on her silhouette, and when he finally caught his breath, he whispered her name, Ko. There she stood, Heijinko, katana gripped and raised, poised to strike, eyes locked steady as chaos swirled all around her.